at 6:32. Board members are present, all but Tracy. Simon had a baseball game tonight, and you know, your kids only go through those things one time, so you kind of have to establish your priorities. So we're going to start out tonight with some reports and presentations to the board. We're going to start with Michelle Perkins. Where did Michelle go?
She's hiding.
Oh. John.
You people make me nervous. All right. What I'm sharing tonight, and I have to kind of wing it, is the, you're like, oh, well, now you can't see me, so that's okay. All the teachers were given this opportunity to apply for some money through the Three Lakes Association. And so I did an application, and actually Lisa Hoover-Hyde also did a very similar one. So Three Lakes awarded us, it's called a Mimeo Teach, Mimeo Capture, and a Mimeo, what do they call it, pad. And what it is a way that we create and make any whiteboard into an interactive whiteboard. So it's just this thing, believe it or not. It magnet to the whiteboard and connects to the computer through a wireless thing. And now my whiteboard can act as an interactive whiteboard. So the reason I was going to demonstrate it, but we don't have magnets here, so. So what I did is, there's not sound, so I apologize, but just to kind of show you, this was a science lesson that we were working on with this one was with the planets, eclipses. So the kids were able to come up, I don't know what's going on with the color, it looks great on the computer. But the kids were able to come up and move around, there we go, the different items that they had to label, so they could move it and put it in place. So it's almost like a touch screen in order to do that. It's been, since we've had this, we also use it with our math, because our new math series has an online component, so we can put the book right up there, use the virtual manipulatives, the kids can come up and do that, I can move things around, highlight things right on the board that they should be noticing in their book. If I pause it okay, it stopped here. But you can see right here is that Mimeo Teach, it just sits right up there on the board. Down below is the capture system, which turns regular dry erase markers into also that whiteboard, so they can capture that, so I can write things on the board. It'll be connected right to the computer, I can convert it. I'm still working out the bugs on that one. I think it's user error a little bit. The second thing, is also with that we got a Mimeo pad. So instead of being right up at the front of the room, I could sit at the back and kind of point things out and have the kids do some work on this as well. Three Lakes awarded one of these systems that for Lisa and I to share. Of course, it will be available to anybody to do that. It's been a great way to integrate some more technology for science lessons and math lessons. We've used it for all kinds of things. So, I just wanted to say thanks and kind of show you some of the things that we're doing.
Hey, Michelle, so the interaction occurs because you can write on that and then they can respond to you. How does that, what's the interaction?
I've used more, I'm still working the bugs out of this, it's all sensitive. It's, again, probably user error more than anything else. Using just the actual teach system is a little bit more. I tell the kids it works through magic. I don't know how it works, but it basically is just turning that into, there's a stylus, which if I'm wondering if that's the question that you're asking.
I'm just wondering what what happens when the kids go up there?
What they are doing, and again, it's hard to see on that, there was a diagram. So
Uh-huh.
there were labels, so they're moving the labels to actually label the diagram up there.
Oh, so
Because
they can move stuff. then.
move stuff around, you can, start videos, do things. If I had this worked out right now, I could walk up there, click the play button, and it would play.
So
Makes
you've
it a
got
smart
your
board.
projector, computer screen on there, and
Yep.
you're just using the whiteboard
Yep.
as your.
It turns it into a
Alright.
smart board or interactive whiteboard. We also, by getting that, there's a Mimeo Connect, which is where many teachers can, you can create your own whiteboard lessons and post them for other teachers to use. Teachers are great, we creatively acquire many things. We share, collaborate. Hey, this teacher did this really cool thing. So I can take their Eclipse's lesson and tweak it and make changes to it myself to fit more what I'm doing rather than reinventing the wheel all the time. So there's a whole, through Mimeo, there's a whole bank of language arts, math, science, social studies, you name it, there are lessons out there at all different levels.
Do you have any idea how much the equipment and that equipment costs compared to a smart board? Is it
Well, just this part, which this was, kind of the number one part of it, was, I think just this part of it was like $600-700, but it makes it portable.
uh-huh.
So, I could, because Lisa and I are gonna share at least here and there, so she can take it.
Unlike a smart board
That's
attached.
then a permanent fixture. All together, I think it was $1,200 or $1,300 to do the capture part and this pad part as well. So, but we really like that portability, and since we're going to share and use it together, it gave us that ability to do that. So, that's kind of-
Well, Michelle, congratulations on
Thanks.
getting
Yeah.
this.
Good job.
And,
Right.
thanks to Three
And-
Lakes, Patricia. Thank you.
Well,
So they've been very generous to our district and awarded many things, I think, this year to some field trips and science magazines as well, so.
Well, it's really nice to be able to show this when so many people are here too.
Yeah, I wish I could
Because
have
we-
gotten it working in here, but.
Well, we get the idea of that, so thanks again.
And if you are more interested, I've got these videos on my Weebly page, that's where I took this from. So if you want to see it at your own home, you could go right on there and look at those. So there's a link to the Mimeo site to kind of show what they're doing, and then I also linked it to the 3 Lakes. Didn't refresh it, but there are several different lessons that I've done that had the kids up and singing, so you can see.
Now, how long have you had this?
January.
So you've really come a long way in just a couple months to be
January.
up and working.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of times the hardest thing, I think,
It
is to
is.
figure out.
Right, and that's why the other components of it I haven't used quite as much yet, because that takes a little more doing to really work the bugs out of that, but we're getting there.
Very good. And is this the lady from the Three Lakes Association?
Yes, I am.
Would you introduce yourself, because we really appreciate that whole association, all they do.
Guilty. I'm Patricia Roush. I'm the education chairman for Three Lakes, Mr. Williams.
Good evening, thanks for being here.
Well, Michelle sent me an email last night and said she was gonna be sharing the grant she got. So I thought it'd be nice if I could come over and speak. This is exactly what we want, is more interaction between our organization and the classrooms. This program is 5 years old, and what we've done is to ask science teachers in Bel Air, Central Lake, Kalkaska, and Mansalona to, if they had a wish list beyond what the school can afford by way of equipment or field trips or speakers coming in and talking to their kids, what would that be? And then we have granted as many of those wishes as we could over the last 5 years, excuse me. And what we ask of the teachers and the principals is that they give us some feedback in the spring as to how the gift was used and what the results were, and usually that comes in the form of some text and a lot of pictures of the kids. As a matter of fact, if there's any way we could get your video up on our website, that's what we'd like to do. We're an environmental group in protecting, trying to do as much as we can to preserve the lakes in the area and keep them as nice as they are now. And we really feel strongly that educating children to this rich environment and giving them a appreciation for it is going to lead into the future. They're the next generation to take care of the lakes, so that's the idea behind the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Carrie?
I just want to say thanks in person. I'm Carrie Gruhl.
Oh,
We've been emailing, but I have gotten grants through Three Lakes every year. I think you've granted, that I've gotten grants for the classroom through them. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. It helps out a lot.
Just to echo Carrie's comment, I've been here about 1.5 years now, and I don't think there's been one that was not funded in that time. I know Eric Boyce and other elementary teachers, Carrie especially, teachers love taking advantage of the opportunity. The grant, unlike many grants, the grant process is not very cumbersome.
No,
It's
it's
pretty
not.
straightforward.
It's painless.
You've done a really nice job compared to others that are countless pages of
I'm a
artifacts.
retired teacher, so
Thank
the one thing I didn't want to do was to give them more work to do. You know, we wanted this to be as easy as possible and fit into what they're teaching. And Carrie is the only teacher in all 4 districts who's applied every year.
Nice job,
I like
Carrie.
to spend, I like to shop.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And the next, moving on, the next presentation we have is Deb McDowell.
I'll just stand right here because the star is right here. I'm here tonight to celebrate and recognize Michaela Graham. She's a 6th grader here in our middle school. She won the International Lions Peace Poster Contest at the district level. We have been participating with our local Lions Club for the last 9 years. And Bob Moore was unable to come tonight. He's got guests, so couldn't come. But Bob, I've been working with Bob for these last 9 years, and every year they have a local contest. We have 3 winners every year. This year it was Michaela took first, Olivia Spence and Gabby Lynn took 2nd and 3rd. And the first place winner goes on to the district, and Michaela won our district. So, and she just was awarded her prize, last week, was it?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago? Were you in West Branch? or-
Yeah, we went to West Branch.
They went to West Branch to receive her award. So this year's theme was Imagine Peace. Every year, it sounds like an easy thing to do, but they are not allowed to use any words on the poster. They have to take the theme. It is an international contest, so they have to incorporate it globally. And without using any words, it becomes quite a challenge to meet that. So I think she did an excellent job.
Very good.
Congrats, Michaela.
Is there a copy of it somewhere online,
It's on the
or?
front of the website.
It's on the front of the website.
Oh,
Front of the
I
district.
haven't
Yes.
seen that.
It's on the Lions website too.
Well, thank you very much.
Principal's report.
Principal's report.
All right.
I frequently forget that, so. Yeah, I know. I figured it was.
At our last 2 all-staff meetings, we've been working on our interim self-assessment. We have to do that as part of our school improvement plan, as part of our NCEA accreditation. We have to go over 5 standards and talk about those as a staff. The first standard is purpose and direction, then we have governance and leadership, teaching and assessing for learning, resources and support systems, and then we have using the results for continuous improvement. At the staff meetings then, we've taken 2 of the standards now as a staff and talked about ways to make improvements in those areas. These past 2 weeks, our 4 core teachers who work on the school improvement plan from the high school came to the elementary and spent a day with our elementary staff meeting K1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 in 2-hour sessions so that they could get ideas across the district because we have to create a K-12 plan. I've been working with Bill Ayton, who is through SHRM, a consultant for math, getting all of our district and state assessments put into a version of PowerSchool, which is called Power Teacher, so that teachers can look at all the assessments that our students have taken throughout their career. We start with elementary assessments and go right on up, so we can look at all those. Deb McDowell and I met with John Olds from Advanced Ed today, and that's the system that we have to enter our accreditation information through. We looked at professional development, teaching strategies, ways to collect data, some really good ideas for professional learning, how we can work better with SHRM and some of our consultants. So just really making a good school improvement plan's kind of been our last month in the district. So we talked a lot about formative assessments versus summative assessments. Your summative assessments would be your state assessments, your MEEPs, your ACTs. Your formative assessments would be observations, exit slips, those kind of things. So making those comparisons and having all of those assessments available across the board. So those are just some things for the last month.
Very nice. You can see that we are busy trying to implement some of the changes that are important to our school. And in doing that, one of the things that we did was we listened to what you said the last meeting, and we have revamped our agenda for our meetings. We're gonna try out some different things, but one of the things was having old business. And the main thing in old business today is to look at the questions that were asked during the April 22nd board meeting and see if we can come up with some answers that will help you understand the things that are happening here at school. So,
Sue, real quick, and we're intending on keeping this a regular item.
we are,
Right.
Right.
So this will be our first attempt to see how this works, but the whole idea is as keeping it a regular item, there's always that feedback loop. So if there's public comment that comes in and we can't respond at that moment, there will always be that opportunity at the following meeting to get feedback. So we're hoping to keep it a regular thing.
and the other thing that a lot of people did who watched the video and weren't at the meeting, they emailed one of us or they called the superintendent. And so we've had a lot more feedback than just at what was at the last meeting, and that was a good thing. And,
So we've also added the closing comment at the end, so
Right.
it's possible to capture some of those.
right, we're going to have comments now, after we clarify some of the things that we've talked about and had some conclusions. And then at the end of the meeting, right before right after the superintendent's report, we're going to have guest and public comment again, so that if you have things that have occurred to you during the meeting and you haven't been able to ask them, that there will be a good time for that at the end of the meeting. So, one of the things that I wanted to do was clarify the disconnect between what the public thought the April 22nd meeting was about and what it was scheduled for. Because one of the comments was that we weren't prepared for any of the questions that you had. Well, that was not our intent at that meeting. It was really, it was meant to be part of the superintendent's annual evaluation process. And so, the Central Lake Board of Education didn't say to the public, come, this is a time for a good public forum. It was really, it was just spread by word of mouth and texted, of course, and all those other media things that happen now. And it turned out to be a really good thing, and we're glad it happened. And tonight, the board is prepared to respond with answers to a lot of the questions that were asked. And after reflecting, and this is pretty much what Sarah just said, we are going to have this in every meeting so that we can have time to respond. During the public comment session of that board meeting, Ken Cruzy raised a legal challenge about a possible violation of the Open Meeting Act. And Mr. Mr. Williams is going to respond to that tonight.
Thank you, Sue. Before I do, I'll just take a brief moment just to say thanks to all the parents and the community members out there who were part of Teacher Appreciation Week last week. Teachers had a great time. We had some goodies coming in from the board. We had some cherries from a certain orchard that I guess will remain unnamed because we have 2 cherry orchards on the board. We had some goodies. We had PTO providing a lunch. We had another lunch provided by the administration, and just tons of parent support, so thank you. Another thank you to the community for helping us renew our operational millage. It passed by 83.9%. We had 143 votes total, 120 yes votes, 23 no. We don't need to discuss what percentage that was of the 2,653 registered voters, but I'm focusing on the 83.9% pass rate. And that millage is instrumental in operating our district. $2.32 million comes in from that, from non-homestead taxes, and without that, the district would truly be crippled. We capture over 90% of our state aid from that one millage, so that's amazing. We are not a Boyne Falls, we're not a Harbor Springs, we're not an out-of-formula district, which means you would actually capture more from taxes than the state would give you per pupil. But with property values beginning to rebound, we're getting closer. We had dropped down to the low 80s, and now we're actually just over 90%. And that's a good trend to see. Also, thanks to all the faculty and all the parents who helped us this past weekend with a safe and very successful prom and post-prom. We had a great turnout. We had tons of donated gifts and items, and the kids were safe and had a great time. And despite chilly rain, it cleared up, and kids were able to go out on the deck at Somerset Point Yacht Club and had a great time. So I did want to get that out of the way. Jumping into the first question about the Open Meetings Act, and these are really in no particular order as they were asked last week, and we wanted to make sure we captured all of them. On the back of your agenda, you have an excerpt from the Public Act, which is quite detailed. Letter A, the very first letter, makes it very clear that a public body, including a Board of Education, can go into a closed session for the purposes of an annual personnel evaluation, which is exactly what the closed session was for. So just wanted to make sure if there were any questions, and I know Ken came to me following the meeting the next day, so we had a chance to chit-chat. But in case anyone else had a concern, an Open Meetings Act violation is a serious challenge. It's a serious violation. There can be fines associated with it. And I wanted the community to understand full well that we have not committed any Open Meetings Act violations. And so this excerpt from the entire law will give you the entire scoop of the parameters that a board, a public body must follow. So hopefully letter A clears that up for everyone there. And I think that covered that one, Sue.
Okay. One of the other questions that was asked is what is being done to correct the fact that teacher evaluations haven't been done in several years, maybe more than that. Sarah, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, we're gonna kind of rotate with some of these responses, and I apologize, I'll be reading the response that I have typed in front of me, so it won't sound incredibly personal.
Well, and let me build on that too. I could have answered all the questions, or Mr. Williams could have, because we went through and did them together as a group pretty much, and you know, to get the answers. And it's the reason that we don't answer personally right now, is because I can speak for myself, but I don't speak for the board necessarily. And so these answers, this is not Sarah's response necessarily.
Just my
But-
lovely voice.
Yes, yes, but we did want you to know that we all did work together on these.
Right, so these are board responses, and also too, just to clarify, because this is a new session that we've never had, is that it doesn't differ dramatically from our open comment. So after I read this, if people have questions, they're free to ask questions about this. So you don't have to wait until our public comment. So anyhow, the question was, what is being done to correct the fact that teacher evaluations haven't been done? That was something that was raised last month. And in preparation for evaluations in the 12-13 school year, and in keeping with the new legislation requiring all teachers to receive performance evaluations annually, Principal Dorenzi and Superintendent Williams developed a short-form evaluation tool last summer and elected to use the existing long-form. So it was last summer elected to use the existing long-form evaluation tool that was negotiated into the collective bargaining agreement many years ago. As with many districts in Michigan, historically in Central Lake schools, evaluations were performed on a very limited basis and were usually focused on non-tenured, newly hired teachers prior to their reaching tenure. The administration has been conducting teacher evaluations this school year, not based on that old model, but on how they're required to now, using a combination of short and long observations, and in keeping with the law will determine an effectiveness rating for each teacher for the 12-13 school year. So this has all begun this year.
Another question that was asked of me that kind of fits in with this is, how come the teachers always know when they're going to be evaluated? And will they, is it something that they prepare for? And, Shelley, do you want to answer that question? Because my understanding was that some of them are actually, you make an appointment and you go at a certain time, and some of them are not. Some of them, it's just whenever you walk in to make that, and some teachers are not. Is that correct?
Right, we do 2 formal evaluations using the long form, which are, we make an appointment with the teacher, and they know when we're coming. The drop-in form is used, just like it says, to drop in. Just drop in for 5 to 10 minutes and do a quick observation. So, and there's more drop-ins than there are the short ones.
Well, and given the fact that observations have not been done, it was asked how it's possible that 100% of the teachers were rated effective. Sarah?
And the answer is, according to the new law, in the absence of any evaluation information from a prior school year, a teacher's annual evaluation rating defaults to effective at this point. And that will change as we move into future years.
But that's how you get 100% effective when no evaluation is done.
You don't have the comparative part.
Right. Okay. Yes,
Will this effectiveness rating be available to the public? Are we gonna be able to see how effective, a particular teacher is?
Right now, there's differing models on how effectiveness ratings will be publicized, if at all. And one thing, an interesting piece about the law stipulates that not only do you have to determine highly effective, effective, minimally effective, or ineffective, those are the 4 categories that an individual can fall into. You as a district have to provide what's called a plan of assistance or an improvement plan for anybody who is below the effective line. So if somebody were minimally effective or ineffective on an annual year-ending summative evaluation, they would then be put on a plan of assistance for the following school year. If at the end of that next school year they were minimally effective or ineffective, the district would be compelled to write a letter home to all parents saying, welcome back to school, your son or daughter will have an ineffective teacher next year. Obviously, that's not a letter that any district is going to be interested in writing. Obviously, that's not something I'm planning on writing. I don't think Shelley Dorenzi is planning on writing that letter. The good news is, from us going around and doing evaluations, whether it's short and long, formal scheduled ones or drop-in short ones this year, I don't believe that is going to be the issue in this district. However, even, let's assume everyone's effective, you still must determine who is the most effective of the effective and who's the least effective of the effective. So the law stipulates you have to actually put a numeric value and create a rank order of your educators. So it's possible that a district would have all of their educators highly effective even, but somebody's gonna be the least effective of the highly effective top-notch category. And so the law essentially demands that you take all those things into consideration. Whether and how those are published is still pretty early because there hasn't been litigation on this. Obviously, there'll be tons of litigation if the district moves to dismiss a tenured individual for an effectiveness rating that's ineffective or minimally effective. Things like the instrument itself will be challenged. The training of the administrator doing the evaluation, has that person been trained and vetted on that instrument? Who did the training? Is that an accredited entity? There will be lots of litigation, and frankly, we're pretty early in the pipeline on that. So some of those things about publicizing or publications of ratings, I'm sure will be coming. I've not seen any definitive guidance on it. So that's a great question. Keep tuned.
thank you.
Are these evaluations, is it objective, or is it, is it like an assessment that you go through and answer questions and the answers are rated and you have a score at the end, or?
You create a numeric score based on a rubric that you can work and develop with the teacher at the start of the year. When you pick your goals and plans, if you say, my goal is to grow my writing scores from this to this, I want to increase by 25%. You work with a teacher to set a metric, whether it's math or reading or writing. Where are we? Where are we trying to go? And so that is an objective way to measure growth. Did you get your students to where you were hoping to get them? It's not necessarily bad if you fall short of that goal. It might have been an extremely lofty goal. So the conversations that Principal Terenzi and I were having were of the nature of saying, hey, set the goal high. I'd rather you set the goal very high and miss the goal than set the goal very low and make the goal. Because elevating students and helping improve student achievement and learning is our ultimate goal. So a high lofty goal that you fall just short of is actually better. So part of it is that objective measure. Part of it are all the other things that administrators hear and work with the community on. So it could be timeliness to work. That now can play into an evaluation and end of the year summary. It could be all sorts of other ancillary things that are connected to the day and the working environment for each teacher. Which, when you look at the tenet and the thrust of that law, the amount of data being collected and analyzed is mammoth. So you need a rubric, you need a category to say, in this category, this will count 10% of the overall. This category counts 20, this is 15, totals up to 100. And so that's how we generate a kind of a numeric factor. So.
Is that then, that numeric, is that how you rank the teachers?
Please make sure if you're going to make a comment or a question, that you say your name
Oh,
first.
I'm Jen
Because
McDaniel.
I was gonna say, although I know the two of you, maybe not everybody does, so. Shalene?
Shalene Glenn. Who does the evaluations?
Principal Terenzi and I.
Okay.
Now, bigger districts with more administrators can bring in others to perform that. Typically, a superintendent is not doing teacher observations and evaluation. In a district this small, with 24 teachers and the sheer number of observations that are demanded of one person, it would be a pretty large task. So we're small enough that I am sharing in the duties, kind of, which quasi wearing the principal's hat for some part of that time. So it's any administrator can be part of that. Like I said, bigger districts might have an assistant superintendent of curriculum instruction or testing or what have you. But here it's just tools.
Hey, another question that was asked quite often is the technology questions. What are we doing to bring Central Lake up to date? And Michelle, you couldn't have made your presentation on a better night, because that was certainly one of the innovative things that are going on here. Keith, do you have a?
The district has just completed a readiness inventory and determined a list of needs of the things they need and want to move forward with. And also the improvements that they've done. They put in a new elementary computer lab, an expanded BST accounting lab, updated various teacher machines, installation of additional overhead projectors, and the addition of Active Directory. The Active Directory system allows someone off-site to update, manage, fix the computers, so they don't have to individually go in and sit down and do each one. I think, Corey, you helped out a lot with that. And then we have been discussing about effective implementation strategies for a tablet initiative and to improve the wireless on campus and upgrade the wireless on campus. And I think that the iPad program, the first step with that would be to outfit all the staff, the administration, and move on from there. That would probably be our best route that we're talking about.
Right, I think one of the things that they have found in some of the other districts, they got the hardware for it, and then didn't have people that were comfortable using it. So you can't, in order to implement something like that, you have to really make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row, so to speak, and the first one has to be having people able to teach and use them and comfortable with them. Even Michelle, as comfortable as you are with technology, you said there are some glitches that are just hard to work out. So.
No, on our campus, wireless is not up to snuff where it should be to provide
Right.
that. I mean, if you get 200 iPads in here, you won't we gonna get that capability? I mean, is that you're actively working on that as we, you know,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
Part of the roadblock now is working with Charter, our business internet. We have, right now, 20 megabits per second. We can buy 30. This summer, we could get 50. Their premium package is 100. Even if we wanted to pay for it right now, we couldn't get it right this moment because there isn't what's called a DOCSIS 3 switch in this valley. It's coming. Right now, I think it's part of that Connect Antrim County initiative that they have monthly meetings in there. And so the pipeline we're working on, if you think about it from plumbing terms, is about like that. And right now, we're hitting about half capacity on a given day. We're not topping it out for the most part. Depending on if someone's streaming a video or working in a lab and downloading video, or working with students creating video or creating presentations, that tends to jam that pipe pretty full. But even as we look at the daily history across a month, we haven't really maxed it out regularly. That is coming, and so going back to what Greg said, if we jump on an iPad initiative and have a pipeline that we will regularly bump into its limits, then that begins to be a frustration for staff and for students. And the last thing you want is to have a product that's supposed to be the cat's meow with all the bells and whistles, and it works 2 days out of 5. So we are actively working with member districts that are up and down this valley to push that DOCSIS 3. Corey, I saw you nodding. I used the tech term correctly, didn't I? And get that as soon as we can. So that's going to be a good thing for us.
Is there a time frame?
We're hearing later summer. I know I called Charter Business when I got frustrated with our service through Copy SD because we were purchasing internet through a bundled discounted package through Sheboygan, Otsego, Pressfield, which made no sense to me. By the time you pipe it down here, why don't we get it locally? Their rate was very good, and I thought they were selling me a kind of a bag of goods until I checked into the DOCSIS 3 limitation. And in fact, they're correct. They are providing us appropriate service especially for the cost, but they too are kind of hamstrung by this installation. But best estimate was July, August, so it could be in time for next year. That would be true.
Ben, did you want to comment real quick too, how we're going through a transition within the technology director?
We
And
do.
how that influences
Right.
the vision at this point? that
We
there's-
do have, here in the next couple of weeks, Cal Schutz, longtime tech director and tech coordinator, is retired. We have not posted that position because part of our best practices funding encourages us to outsource and go for shared services with the ISD. We and all other school districts do look to do that when we can. They are in the process of securing bids for us to provide remote, going back to the Active Directory, remote tech services where they can have a technician provide us supports from offsite, to include also a package that would be more costly but would provide us someone here either part-time or full-time. Not sure that's the way I want to go. I've worked in districts that did a lot of remote service. Sometimes you save a little money and you generate a ton of headache when you wait 3 days to get a lab back up and running. So paying a little bit more upfront for the individual here, boots on the ground makes a lot of sense, at least from my past experience. But again, it's all about the dollars. So once those quotes come in, we'll have a better understanding of the direction we can go and whether or not we're actually posting that job.
And I just brought that up because, as we're coming up with some vision for technology, we're going through that transition. So, I think it's pretty safe to say we all are in favor of technology and we bring it up regularly, so is that
Regularly.
Okay.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Okay, another question that has been asked is, what are we doing about the fact that teachers who've been teaching here a long time are teaching the same old curriculum for too many years without changing it? And we have a very definitive answer to that.
I'm Betsy King. First of all, teachers are all working on transitioning their curriculum from targeting the old grade level standards and expectations and the high school content expectations that were part of the old standard curriculum to the new standards, which are called Common Core. And Common Core standards require increased depth and mastery of content at an early age and require greater synthesis and application of knowledge rather than rote memorization. So the teachers are either in transition or already had transitioned to those standards. Also, the observations and evaluations of teachers by administrators are effective at allowing administrators and teachers to have focused dialogue about what is being taught, how it is being taught, and what standards the lesson objectives are targeting. Any questions? And so we have standards, they're set out there, they're changing, and we're changing with them.
And they're set by the state. A
Yeah.
lot of them, yeah.
Now, that lesson plan might look the same, but we are living up to the standards which are set out there for us.
And I think that combination with the evaluations is gonna move us in that direction too.
And teachers don't, I won't believe, have a lot of flexibility because they have to be, highly qualified to teach something, so I don't believe they have the flexibility to move around unless they are highly qualified to do that.
The flexibility they have is how they target that curriculum, but for the most part, those standards are pretty rock solid, and you do have some flexibility about the pacing, the amount of time you spend on each unit or substandard, but ultimately, their roadmap is pretty clear.
Okay, another question that parents were asking was, why do I have to hire a tutor? Because my kids aren't getting a proper education here in Central Lake. And what's being done about that? And Melanie has the answer
Sorry,
to
I'm
that
losing
one.
my voice, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, perfect then. We talked a little bit, they talked about a little bit in the last two, the curriculum alignment, the updates to technology, the Common Core. But we suggest that a parent who has this question, make sure to contact the teacher, schedule a meeting and work together to arrange tutoring and meetings before, during, or after school to get extra help from the teacher. I know that Central Lake teachers work with students who need extra help, so make sure if you need help, you're asking. On a personal note, I have a student who needs very much extra help, and the teachers have been more than willing to come in before school for him, stay after, help him during a seminar. We've asked for the help, and anyone that I've asked has been very accommodating to get him the extra help that he needs.
And if you do come in and ask and you don't get the response that you would like to have, then your next step would be to see Principal Dorenzi. And if you still do not get the results you want, then your next step is the superintendent. Don't give up and sit and I've said this to a lot of you as kids, and don't sit there and whine and complain, and not get the result you want. See the people who are effective in making that change. Start out with the teacher, but then if you don't get the response you want, continue with it. Don't give up. So, another problem area that people have expressed concern about is that the school has lacked in teaching their children math. And Greg, would you like to explain some of the things that are being done about that?
And sure, and kind of to build off what Sue was saying, is that teachers are, in fact, all of our teachers are open to interacting with parents and getting to know what their children's needs are and handle that as best that they possibly can. Also, Central Lake administration is working with the math teachers to explore the level approach to mathematics instructions at the high school level to allow students to take a readiness assessment and then to make the next higher math class regardless of one's grade level. Targeting mathematics instructions at the student's readiness level makes a great deal more sense for delivering a one-size-fits-all model. It is more costly, but it is one of the best for all students. And also to kind of add to this is in the elementary school there, the tutelage is also available through the after-school program. There's an asset that we still have.
Thank you. Another comment at our last meeting was that we've lost a lot of students to other schools because there are concerns about ours. And how did we intend on stopping that from continuing? Well, one of the things is the things that we've talked to you about, some of the program changes. But I think, Ken, did you ask some specifics about how many we lost and how many we gained? And
I was curious as to how many we lost to other school districts where they still are in this community, and if they left because they felt that kids got a better education somewhere other than here.
okay, we have a definite answer to that this week.
Breaking it down, we'll do elementary first. Elementary started the year at 139 students, and as of today has 140, so we're up one. But that's not the whole story. A closer look indicates 19 student move-outs, but 20 student move-ins, so hence the one up. Of the 19 move-outs, only 2 of the 19 left due to stated concerns about the school. Both families had expressed some class size concerns at the kindergarten level at the start of the year. These concerns were addressed with a split to the kindergarten by hiring the second part-time kindergarten teacher. I think at the time of the split, we were at 20, Carrie, 29? Is that right? 29. Which Carrie can attest are a lot of youngsters to work with at one time. So happy that we were able to divide that group into 14 and 15. The other 17 students moved to Ellsworth, Fife Lake, Mansalona, West Branch, St. Joseph, Bel Air, Kalkaska, East Jordan, and the states of Maine and Georgia. So that would kind of tally the breakdown of elementary. Middle school, high school, grades 6 through 12, started with 201 students as of May, today, May 13th. We now have 195, so down 6. This is 23 move-outs, 17 move-ins, breaking down that number. Of the 23 who moved out, 1 expressed concerns about lack of support and lack of an after-school middle school program, which is being addressed through a grant request for a middle school 21st century after-school program. 1 student transferred of this bunch to alt ed, 3 left school entirely. So that breaks down the numbers up and down for the district. So down 5 if you look at that total. The one up elementary, down 6 for the middle school, high school. And then I know I referred to the general numbers. We're probably still consistent with those roll-up numbers. 37 seniors. Mr. Renzi, I don't think you're planning on retaining any seniors, right? They're all graduating?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Awesome.
And they're done Friday, so they're very excited.
That's good news. So 37 unfortunately leaving us, great kids, but they're moving on. And Ms. Grohl, best numbers 16-ish coming in?
Yeah, there are a few on the fence, but I would say we're looking somewhere between 17 and 20 right now. But what we typically have happen is between now and September, we have a lot more kids come in than what we think we have. So it's really hard to predict right now. I think last year at this time, we thought we were going to have less than 20, and we started the year with 29. So.
Right. We had, I think, 10 move-ins over the summer.
And you can hear our transient numbers are just so high within the last 3 years. Yeah. In and out, a lot more than ever before.
Shelley or Ben, is it our standard practice that ask families who are withdrawing their reasons for leaving?
Mm-hmm.
So we do that to all adults.
A lot of people approach us or call on us.
We had several emails that expressed similar concerns to things that were asked at the meeting. And to paraphrase those, they were concerned about the lack of music and art in the elementary school, and the fact that in recent years we haven't had a Christmas program. And they were concerned about the loss of recess and in the elementary, and the lack of elective options in the middle school and high school, and what was being done to address these concerns. And we lumped those together, and Shelley, would you respond to those, please?
I will. These concerns are shared by the district teachers, the staff, the administration. We just concluded interviewing for a full-time band music position so that we could expand music back into the elementary school. This will allow us to ensure that elementary students can participate and enjoy the Christmas program, which we all know and love. It's going to begin in the fall, and we're thrilled to have it back. Also, Mr. Williams and I are working with teachers to examine ways to recreate the elementary recess in our cost-effective model that's kind of cost-neutral. We recognize the benefits, however, we have to find ways to get it in there in a cost-conscious way. This year we added health careers as a pathway in our Career Tech Ed program, and as of next year we're going to have 2 classes, so we'll have health careers 1 and 2. So we're really excited about that, and as elective offerings come up, we want to add those as many as we can. Just they're all just cost effective and cost conscious, and we're working toward that.
Just to build on that, I know a couple weeks ago, Greg Schooks and I went to Gaylord for a presentation hosted by Michigan State, looking at careers in ag education and ag ed opportunities. So whether it's ag science, ag bio, plant botany, turf management, animal husbandry classes, the sky's the limit. Michigan State, a preeminent institution in the ag sciences, career tech ed area, has added a ton of certificate track programs, and they really are working hard to reach out to high school guidance counselors, principals, superintendents, and boards, just to really sell that program and talk about the opportunities for employment in ag. One thing we know as a board and we've looked at is we have some upfront costs. So if we wanted to add welding, we used to have, I think, auto shop a few years back. If we wanted to bring that back, let's say we wanted to add pipe fitting or welding or plastic shop or computer repair, we could add any number of career tech ed courses, but the first year, it's all on our dime. So we're investing in the instructor's salary, we're investing in the program, the supplies, the materials. In the second year, the district does get some reimbursement money from the SHAR for all career tech ed programs. But that first year is the hurdle. And so to look at a program like a turf management or an ag bio class, when you have a hoop house, the upfront start costs are a lot less than bringing back auto tech or auto mechanics. You would need to reimagine the space in the building, reinstall the lift, purchase the tools, find the instructor. Those things are really daunting when budgets are tight. But those discussions are taking place regularly here in the district about how do we provide increased opportunities for our students, whether it is voc ed or not voc ed, career tech ed classes. We'll continue that discussion.
Excuse me? Yes, I just want to go back to the arts for a minute. Can I do that for just a minute? Sure. Shelley's laughing over here. I just wanted to do a little promo for some arts activities coming up at school this week. Wednesday night is a band concert, and for those of you that don't know, our high school band got a 1 at districts, and so they went on to state festival and did an extraordinary job, and also credit to Sarah Finney as her first year as band director to be able to do that. So that opportunity is coming up Wednesday night. This weekend we have dance recitals here, both Saturday and Sunday at 4 o'clock. Come early if you want a good seat. And also we have some art students, and I think, did Deb leave already? We have some art students who have some artwork in competition in East Jordan. I believe it's set up right now, and through the Jordan Valley Arts Council. So that's going on. But I guess something else I would like to say with my teacher hat on, that was kind of my parent hat on, but with my teacher hat on, is that any parents that really, really care about the arts, there are plenty of opportunities to get involved and help support what we do have. We would love to have more, but there are some needs with a music boosters. We have a music boosters organization, and we have a long list of needs for people to help with some things related to our current music program. We also have long lists of needs for people to help with our dance program. So if you really like the arts and you want to get involved, like swing by the dollar store and buy his teacher some watercolor sets or something, anything like that, you know, we are trying really hard as classroom teachers to to try to take on as much of that as we can because we don't have an art program, but finances are limited. So we are trying to be very creative with how we get materials. And thank you to any of you that have done that for us because that's really, really appreciated. So, thank you.
I have a question to add to what you were just talking about. It's my understanding then from what you're saying, if those products were available to you, there is time in your curriculum
Well,
to fit that in?
we try to, I don't like to say kill birds because I don't like to kill birds, but we try to kill as many birds with one stone. And when we were talking about, you know, some people in the public being upset because we didn't have a Christmas program, you know, we as teachers had the discussion of, okay, what do we let go of in the day so that we can practice the songs for the Christmas program? So on the one hand, we want scores to go up.
Right.
We can't, you know, do all of that. So what we're trying to do right now is to integrate as much as we can. So to look for ways to teach things together, to incorporate the art. That's what we're trying to do.
And is that same reason for trying to fit everything in, the reason that recess has been taken away?
No.
Okay.
That was
I'll
my
let the-
question is, you mentioned cost as being a reason for recess being taken away. Could you explain
Sure.
how that works?
Last year, and I think for many years, this district and many others were using employees who were funded through Title I dollars. Title I dollars are federal dollars, and those dollars are restricted for instructional programming purposes in the classroom. Districts go through an audit periodically, especially for title programs, and the audit showed that 3 individuals were being paid through Title I funds to monitor recess. So the cease and desist order was sent to the district. Of course, the district complied, but what that meant was we had to reimagine how do you embrace recess in that form. We had 3 individuals who were doing quite well. Prior to my arrival, a decision had been made to eliminate 5th grade recess. The recess last year was K-4. 5th grade, Michelle, you could probably elaborate, was doing phys ed time every day in lieu of the recess. So it had begun to dwindle evidently some years. Michelle, how many years ago was that?
That was last year.
Okay, 2 years ago, that 5th grade
That was
was
the
not.
first year. My first grade, 5th grade was the first year there was no recess for 5th graders.
Okay. So part of the discussion is how do you provide that safe, supervised recess opportunity for multi-grades, not just the one teacher take the class out at a time model, which is what we had this year. Teachers were free to take their students out for that recess break as individuals or to try and coordinate and partner with their peers' schedules to get multiple classes out. But that, when there's a defined period of recess during the day, it's surely a lot easier to plan around because it happens at 11:10 or it happens at 12:05 or whatever that might be. To reimagine that or plan that daily and weekly is an extra burden. So some of the things we're looking at are how do we provide that coverage. You can't put one adult outside for 120 students. But how do we get multiple adults outside with appropriate supervision in a cost-neutral or minimal cost format, rather than adding some significant dollars to the bottom line, so.
And does it have to be a teacher, a certified teacher that does recess?
Should be a teacher outside, yes. Now, the other staff don't have to be, but you should have one teacher out there with.
Well, and I just wondered because, I know a lot of grandmas that have said to me a lot in the last, like just finding out about this no recess in the fall and whatever, about, well, I would take a turn. I sign me up, go tell them, I'll take a turn, I just wondered, if you had a teacher out, just one teacher, because then you obviously need a couple, because there's so many kids.
Sure.
Could we use that as an avenue too, to have, 2 other volunteers a day that, when somebody comes in, 2 come in every Monday, 2 come in every Tuesday, you can plan your schedule around it, you're retired because you're a grandma, you know what I mean, you have a little extra time, you can spend time with the kids, I'm just saying,
The grandmas in the room are doing that.
I'm just saying, I know if my kids were in elementary school, she would make the time.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I know lots of other.
But volunteers, I
That
think.
would come.
You're
Yeah,
asking, are volunteers acceptable?
Yeah.
Are the volunteers acceptable?
One certified, but then.
Counting that as instruction, you have to have a teacher outside, so that's the whole second
So the
discussion.
But you can't do that under, you couldn't do that under
Right,
type
we
one.
would have to.
Under the
Yeah,
state
no,
That's
manual
important to bring up,
counted
because
as-
You could,
that's
if
part
you
of
have a
that.
teacher.
Yeah.
What if you bite?
If it,
Providing, go ahead.
if it's a if you do it all non-certified, then you would have to add time to the school day, because you're counting those as part of your instructional hours,
Right.
your instructional minutes.
As long as you have one
If you have
certified
one
teacher out there.
certified teacher out there, then you can count that as part of your instructional time. If you do not, then you have to add time to your day to count those in your allotted hours and minutes sphere.
So if you were to, I don't really know, I have no idea about how people or teachers are paid, but if you added like 25 minutes to the school day, let's say, without having to, for recess or whatever, do teachers get paid like on the year, you know what I mean? Or is it like how many days they work or how many hours they work? I mean,
There's a contract that stipulates.
That's
the
what I
number
wanted
of-
to know.
The number of hours they're gonna teach during the day, the number of
okay,
minutes
that's
per
what I wanted
time.
to know. Okay.
And so the real conundrum would be, if you added 30 minutes just in the elementary, you would totally discombobulate your busing. Because you would have one building out a half hour before the other, and then what do? You don't wanna buy more buses to run separate runs, so, and then do you add 30 minutes over here, and if so, why? And what does that do to the contract, what does that do to the?
Yeah, that's what
bottom line?
I figured there was a formula, but I just
Right.
wasn't sure what that.
It is a complex, the good news is, I think everyone knows the value of an appropriate multi-grade recess. The challenge is, how do you implement that cost neutral or minimal cost in a safe manner? If you're counting the instructional minutes, you have the teacher outside, you're not, then, it's not incumbent on you to add the 30 minutes to the day. No one's proposing adding the 30 minutes right now, but
Right.
suffice it to say.
No, I just wondered,
all-
no, I just
all
wondered
models
how
are
that
being
all
looked
works,
at,
yeah.
so is there a volunteer model that could be implemented? I won't rule anything out. So the good news is, elementary staff and Principal Lorenzi will continue that discussion. I'll be part of that discussion, and that will be, ultimately at board level as well, so.
You have a free half hour during the day, don't you?
Free half hour? I haven't seen it if I do.
I got a question. Seriously, how long is the recess?
30 minutes.
So what you're asking for is teachers,
I'm sorry, that may not be 100% accurate.
Well, this year? No, it's.
How long is
in
recess?
general.
20,
In
it
general.
was, since I've been here, it's been 20 to 25.
It was 20 or 25.
so for those minutes to count as teacher curriculum time, you need a teacher on the
Right.
thing, right? So what we're asking is for our teachers to give a little bit of their time under the contract they already have. We said grandparents for volunteer, they'll give up time. We're asking our teachers to care enough about the kids in the recess to be willing to go out there with them and not demand more money for being out there at recess.
Is that what
time.
you're asking?
I know, I mean, is that a scenario?
No,
Carrie
that
is-
wasn't what I was asking.
Carrie's
No,
hand
that's
is
No, that's what-
back
that's-
there.
No,
I mean,
no,
what-
that-
what-
this
what is
was
the issue
not
that
a
the
tea-
teachers
No,
won't
this
go
was
on, I
not
guess?
the teachers
Okay.
not wanting to offer recess. We were strongly opposed to recess being taken away. So this was not about us not wanting to go outside. So what has happened this year is we were given the 30 minutes, and, I don't know if you've ever spent the day with 29 5-year-olds, but we go out for those 30 minutes every day. But what's happened now is it's not a consistent every day at 10 to 10:30, this group goes out. We're doing all different things, because some of us go out at a certain time, some of us split it up, 15 and 15. Some people are, just everybody's doing something different. But no, it was, just to clear that up, it was not an issue that the teachers were opposed to doing recess. Is that fair?
Yeah.
I'm glad we cleared it up, because that was the perception in the community, that's why I brought it up, that's what people were saying, is why won't the teachers go out there, they saying no?
And I'd like to say similar to technology, this is something that we discuss, and this comes up, so I encourage people to come to our board meetings, because this is a particular issue that we do kind of come back to from time to time, quite often.
And then I just had one more question, totally going back to when we were talking about the electives for high school, now that my babies are in junior high and high school. When I was in high school, 20 years ago, I went to the Catholic school in Gaylord, and we had shared time with the Gaylord Public School. So classes that weren't offered at St. Mary's, we were able to go to the public school and use some of those like AutoCAD and nursing and all those college classes, kind of like see what you wanted to do or be or whatever. I didn't know if that is anything, when you're talking about the startup cost of whatever, okay, so does Ellsworth have an AutoCAD that we could be like, hey, we wanna send our kids there, why don't you send your kids here for 2 hours, you know, like for a 2 hour, whatever it would be? Or does Bel Air have something that, you know, we could do like a shared, because we are all little schools, that would
Model-
benefit our
that model
babes, all of them?
does exist, and so we do have students go in Boyne City for culinary arts.
Oh,
for
very
example.
cool, I didn't
We
know that.
have had students go to TBA ISD, the dual enroll, down there in Traverse City.
Mhm.
The challenge becomes, and it really goes back to, and I think we're gonna get to this question later in the agenda, it goes back to career college advising at an early age. And so have you prepared that student and have you worked with that family earlier so that it's not a last minute add-in, hey, I want to take this next year, oops, this is the year I've got these 4 required classes and my world language, I don't have the room because I need a release hour to drive there.
Right.
And so when you look at a 6-period day and you look at the travel time to TBA, ISD, or Boyne City for culinary, you know you have to back 1 hour out of the schedule because there's travel time, so the student's not in class. So taking those things into consideration on the front end really helps that discussion. And so when you begin mapping out kind of that 4-year curriculum plan, or you're working with your 8th graders and talking about 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, you're looking at your course sequence map. What are we gonna take when, and do I have that, I better not take that elective this year, I better take it here, because I know I want. And so it's that kind of 4-year jigsaw.
And that's something you guys are gonna start
Exactly.
become more active in working with?
Yeah. And that began in a small part this year, and that will continue next year with our expansion to a full-time guidance counselor position that will have a great deal more time to work with students one-on-one, in addition to grade level meetings.
And kids have gone to TBA for a long time.
Oh, good.
I mean, from Frank's graduating, which is a long time, so it's not like it's, you know,
And the other thing there that happens
you have
too is
to figure out what you want and make it work.
the online classes are good for some kids. That's
Sure.
been a real benefit for us.
Going along with that, Becky Wilson, with the new state requirements, with only being, I don't know what high school is, I don't have one yet, a 6-hour day or whatever, how many electives, like I know lots of schools have went to trimesters so that their kids can have more electives. Like, how many electives are high schoolers allowed?
It
Like-
differs year to year, depending on the
But-
number of required classes.
But
Depending on
I know,
ninth.
but like for your whole high school career, you have, I mean, the state has added so many classes from, I graduated 18 years ago, and it's, like I went to Bel Air, we only had, you know, that we were on a 7-hour, and you maybe had 1 extra elective you could
Mhm.
take, and now with the state, like, that's why people went to trimesters, so that, like, I know my brother teaches in Traverse City, that was their reason for going to trimesters, so the kids could have more electives offered. I guess, so, like, I just think it would be hard because of the state requirements to even do a program like that where you have a release hour. Because I know, I'm like, my husband, when we went to Bel Air, he went to Mansalona for welding, but had that extra hour.
Right, right. And in the past, they didn't allow folks to travel until the junior year, so they would hold the dual enrollments until 11th or 12th grade, for 2 reasons. Number one, they wanted really to focus on the academic core early 9th and 10th, and it really helps that the student has a license, because that can be part of the equation as far as self-transport, in lieu of busing or in conjunction with. What they've done now is they've begun to allow that all the way down to 9th grade. However, then it's incumbent on the district to get creative with, is it a shared arrangement with busing? Are you partnering with a neighboring district? So those things exist. I have worked in a district that runs a trimester. The trimester is sold for exactly the reason that you mentioned, freeing up additional opportunities for electives and helping kind of a recovery model. If you drop a credit or a half credit in the first try by December 1 or November 28, whenever it ends, you can reschedule that. If you fail biology A, you can reschedule it in the middle winter try and then still pick up the second half of the class in the spring. So you still teach the classes in halves. You teach your AP classes in 3 chunks, fall, winter, spring. The struggle with the trimester becomes, and I heard this teacher feedback loud and clear for 5 years, we don't get to know the kids. You see, now that wouldn't be true in a smaller district per se, but in a bigger district, you see the kids for 12 weeks instead of 18 weeks. You're given the final exam at the 12-week part, you know, of that credit.
Right.
And then there's constant rescheduling. So the challenge on the office staff, the guidance staff, and the faculty to re-image and re-update Power School and get their grades done. And you have one more year-ending experience, and I tell you, it makes for a pretty harried and hectic environment. I'm not sure, with the number of staff we have, that would even be feasible. We would have to take a really close look at the number of empty slots in the trimester. It would probably mean adding elective teachers, which ultimately is great, it's what we want, but on the front end, again, would be that cost factor, so. Shelley, were you gonna add to
I
that?
was just gonna say, just scheduling alone, just with middle school and high school, sharing those
Right.
same teachers.
And
And
what
Becky,
were
to
the-
answer your question, they get one elective as freshmen and sophomores currently, because they all have to take the world languages requirement, so they have to take a world language as a freshman, as a sophomore. So then they get 2 electives currently as juniors and seniors. And some seniors get 3 hours where they can do a work experience, or depending on how many other academic classes they get done.
Greg, did you want to add?
Yeah, I just kind of want to talk about the meeting Ben and I went to with MSU, and the reason why we're looking potentially into doing some kind of ag class is because there's 1 out of every 4 jobs is ag related in our state. It's the second largest industry in our state. And the governor has challenged us to push the economical impact in our state from $91 billion into our states to upwards of $120 billion. He hasn't come out with a number yet. But Ben kind of talked about, we have a hoop house, we've had gardening clubs, we've kind of flirted with this before in the past, and now we feel we've had success from that to possibly move on to a larger venue of this if we do some sort of veterinary medicine. Every small town has a dog and a cat and a rabbit and veterinary. We don't need those. We need large animal vets. Most dairies now hire a full-time veterinarian for this. There's a very, very large demand, upwards of $50,000 to $60,000 salary rate starting out. In the House, there's a bill that would change the Michigan Merit Curriculum, allowing a biology class to count if you had an established ag class for your biology credit for that student to be in that ag class now. So now the student that possibly is challenged in the classroom can go out to a hands-on environment and just thrive and succeed. If we did set up, and however we want to tailor this to, we would love some input. We could get a 4-H program going in our community and use the facilities that if we may or may not have. Then so there's so much potential to move forward with not just, hey, I got my farming hat on, I want to see us plant cherries or grapes or whatever that is. That's not the case at all. Michigan is as far and exceeded any manufacturing output on a percentage base of dollars added to our state that it's now some force to be reckoned with, and it's going to be many, many jobs moving forward. So that's my plug. I'm a farmer, I'm a guy, yes.
Is FFA a possibility?
Yes, if you have an established ag class, Ellsworth does have an FFA.
They do?
And we mentioned,
Okay.
excuse me, I'm fighting allergies too. So we mentioned the kind of a coalition between different schools. I mean, they have a FFA chapter up and running, they have an ag class. Theirs is kind of tailored, or it once was a horticulture program, now I believe now that Chris has it, it's gonna kind of create into a large veterinary medicine program. So we can really work with Ellsworth in partnering what a large ag class could be for our surrounding districts.
That would be great.
And going back to that schedule, I hate to keep going back to that, because here's a perfect example. Right now, Ellsworth has an A-day, B-day schedule with classes of 1 hour and 40 minutes, or 1 hour and 45. And then on Fridays, every class is in smaller chunks of time. So 4 days out of 5, they run one model. The 5th day, they run them all. That would be pretty awkward. That would be a challenge right now on our 6th period day with standard, 55-minute classes and a 5-minute bell change. That'd be a real trick for us to work with, but it wouldn't be impossible. Once again, you have to look at that release hour to provide the transport and get creative and work with them. And so those discussions are certainly possible and will be ongoing with Ellsworth or with anybody else who has a program that students here would like to take advantage of those. Yes?
Because we AV schedule like they have shorter semesters and shorter marking periods. Their seniors were out last week, and the rest of their students are done with their academics calendar as of right now, and they're doing open electives for the remainder of the year, which is like agriculture classes and all these other drama and theater and stuff that we, I guess, don't offer, but they can't normally offer in a regular school year either. That's why they have, it's called Lancer Week. That's why they're doing Lancer Week at the end of the year to fit the open electives in. Is that something that would be, you know, if we changed up the way, allergies, if we changed up the way our semesters are and the length of marking periods and stuff like that, if we were able to change to trimesters or whatever, would we be able to fit in things at the end of the year? It would be hard to squeeze open electives in during the 6-hour day, but if we were able to change things up, we fit them in like they do at the end of the year for X amount of weeks or something like that.
You could make any number of schedule changes if that's the goal, to definitely achieve that. The 6-period day is going to be the least expensive schedule model. A trimester is more expensive. A 4x4 block is even more expensive, just based on the number of staff you have, the number of minutes they're teaching per day, and their required prep time. So when you look at a 6-period day with an instructor teaching 5 and planning 1, that is a less costly model to a district than a 4x4 block when you teach 3 and prep 1, and each class is 9 minutes. And the trimesters in between. And so there's different schedule options, and each has their strengths, and each has, you know, their weakness or their drawbacks. I've worked on just about every schedule. There are strengths to all, and there are drawbacks to most. Unfortunately, as dollars are tighter, we have to be more cognizant of exactly those bottom line figures, and what does that do for our district? Does that require the hire of 2 more people to make that happen? If so, that's, you know, $180,000 investment to pull that schedule change off. So I won't rule anything out. I know Principal Dorenzi has worked diligently over the last 4 to 5 weeks building 2 or 3 or 4 template schedules that we're looking at for next year as far as staffing models. So nothing's off the table, but a move to something like a trimester or a block or an AV block would be something I would want to make sure the entire faculty was involved with, because if you talk to elective teachers on that AV model, they really don't like it, because, you know, if you're a music teacher, you want your kids every day, not every other day. And so looking at what's best for kids, you also want to take into consideration what's best for staff to implement that schedule and that instructional model. And so I would definitely not want to make a leap to something without involving every teacher in the building, working with Principal Dorenzi to come up with an appropriate recommendation for Central Lake.
Although, Ben, the vocab stuff could be different. And you
Sure,
talk about
sure.
music, but the vocab, like
Sure.
agricultural stuff could actually.
Oh, it could, yeah.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say real quick, as a board member, it's just great to get this feedback, because although like in this given fiscal year, we have to be very careful, we may have years in the future where we have some options. So it's nice to get this ongoing feedback, and I get it through emails too, and I've heard the Ellsworth system, that model come up numerous times. So that's good feedback for at least me to hear that kind of stuff, so that when we do think about what are good choices for the school, we at least know what people are interested in.
I wanted to add too that we keep saying that it's influenced by money, it's influenced by how much we have to spend, it's influenced by where we're at. There are school districts around us that are hundreds of thousands of dollars in the red, and they're having to make drastic changes. We aren't. We're adding to our schedule. We're adding things because we've made a lot of these hard choices in the past, and we'll continue making them, because it's very difficult to say, well, this is what I know is best for kids, but this is what we can afford. And it's important to look at those things and weigh them, you know. And like I said, we can look at some of the school districts around us and see the condition that they're in. And although it's difficult, and And like Sarah said too, who knows what the future will bring? We might have money, and then we will be able to look at some of these programs and adding more things back, than we are, so. Did you have a question?
Most of them were covered, a lot of it was, Lisa's question on Ellsworth program. So my question, I guess now is, you know, we've talked about, first, thanks for listening to everybody, I think this is great, I really do. We've talked about recesses being an issue, electronics, iPads, the block schedule like Ellsworth. At what point does the board say, okay, this is what we're doing next year? Because as I sit here right now, I know one family that has full intentions of taking their students to Ellsworth next year because of some of these issues. So at what point do they feel comfortable that Central Lake next year is going to address these and the board says, okay, this is our schedule next year, or we've got the recess thing under control. Under control is probably a bad word. Different. You know, at what point does that happen though, I guess, is when does the budget get prepared, when you know this, when does the community know what to expect from Central Lake schools next year?
The budget is due at the end of June, and that's true for all districts, and so I would imagine all districts are costing out their models. You know, we typically schedule our final budget meeting where we have a community forum to present the budget, and then the board adopts the budget as proposed for the next school year. Usually it's June 27, 28, it's right about the end of the month, which gives the board time to work with the administration and look at those models and cost them out, and obviously to consider all feedback. And so I would believe, you know, it may be possible to have some answer on a specific program prior to June 27th, but the overall budget proposal wouldn't go forward until then. So I think that's most of the answer.
Some of the things you already know though. You already know that we're adding music. And so, and I think down a little bit, we're adding a counselor. So you already know that those kind of changes are in place. But are we going to change the way our day looks? I think I'm hearing from Ben that probably not. It's going to be 6
Not
hours.
this year.
Not this year.
Get it going this year,
I mean,
at this point.
It's
need
the
a lot
best
more
bang for your
input than
buck.
just the board, you know, like as Ben said, I mean, the teachers are a big part of the school. They need to have a lot of input on that too.
And we
I
need
just hate to see us lose speed to surrounding schools because they're doing business. We're not, and I don't know how
Well,
to
what's
say
great,
that.
Ken,
but-
is that we're having this discussion.
Right, oh, well.
Because that's what moves us in that direction. So even though we're close to having to finalize a budget now, this is the kind of stuff that will stay on our minds as we move into that next year.
And the other thing I think people need to look at if you're considering moving your kids to Ellsworth is that there, as Ben said, there are pros and cons to all of these systems and all the different ways of teaching. When, years ago, I taught for a school district that did 6 weeks on school, 6 weeks off, year-round. So, you know, every 6 weeks you had, and it was a cost-effective way of doing it. But was it educationally sound? Was it good for kids? Some of them not. You know, if you have 6 weeks off school every 6 weeks, you lose a lot. So what I'm saying is you need to look at the pros and the cons of whatever you're doing. And that's what we're doing too, is looking at pros and cons, so. Moving on, another question was asked by a parent about the biology class and why they haven't performed any labs. Jay, I think that was your question?
I said that I
Right.
had heard.
Well, we do have an answer for that because we looked into it. Sarah?
And I have direct sight of her, and I was gonna kind of target her and say.
Okay.
Because I'm the note taker, so I know who to ask these, but, I believe the question had to do with a particular biology class, so that's what the answer is, so I hope we're accurate there. And this biology class is taught by Liz Washer, and she teaches in a math classroom. So that's where we run into that challenge is, she did have students conduct labs in that classroom, but instead of doing actual lab setting investigations and projects, she did more modeling scenarios. So she did work in some modeling scenarios. One example would be substituting rice for actual amoebas. And then recently they have gotten out on the inland sea ship and performed some tests out there. I'd like to add, Ben, is, I guess a question I'd have at that point is, is there any possibility that she could have access to laboratories? Because that seems, in my opinion, to be a pretty big detriment.
Shelley, do you want to add to that?
For Shelley.
Well,
With dishwasher class, she's had that challenge of working in that lab work, and that's what Jenny's question was, and hopefully I'm not speaking for you, Jenny, if you want to say
No,
something.
I don't know who it was.
Oh.
Someone just voiced it to me and I thought, well, that seems a little odd. I just want to know if that's true, you know, because experimenting on, you know, dissecting
not dissect
animals
at all?
is huge. I mean, I did it when I was in school. It was gross, but we did it. It was just on worms and
Frogs and rats.
frogs, but, you know.
Frogs and rats.
So your question to me is,
Well,
the
the
lab
question
available?
I had is with her facilities being limited, do we have possibilities?
The lab
where
is
she-
open at this time.
All right, so there may be some room for changing that a bit.
Because I think that would get more kids excited about it. I mean, some of the girls probably not, but some of the boys, yeah. Let's.
Well, I think they gave me this question because I teach biology at North Central, so.
Ah.
Most people agree. And you are exactly right, any hands-on or active learning is really great to have.
Definitely.
And I'm sure, you know, Liz would be open to that, so it's just a matter of promoting that and trying to get that worked into the program. So Shelley's the person for those types of concerns to go and talk.
Thank you. There was also a question asked by, through email about why the guidance counselor hasn't met with students individually to inquire about their college or career goals and interests. And they pointed out that at a school they had heard about, the guidance counselor met at least twice a year with every student. And to develop those things early, so that, like we talked about before, that the kids can decide what they want to do and try it out, I think Betsy, you had the definitive answer.
Jerry McAvoy is our counselor, and he did work 80% of the time last year, 80%. But we have concluded interviews and do have a new counselor coming in, a full-time counselor. So we see that we're hoping he will be able, or this person will be able to work with individuals and groups in the middle school and high school to access career interest inventories, to discuss career and college advisement. And we're hoping that he might develop and implement a proactive character education course for middle school students, and to support students and teachers with a full array of guidance and counseling resources.
Another question was asked about how the public gets answers to questions that are asked during the public comment time. And I think we've covered that pretty much, so I'm not going to go into it anymore. But needless to say, if you don't get an answer that you want, either ask the question again, or if it's if it's something you can call one of us on the board, or you can email us, or you can call school and talk to Shelley or Ben. Yes.
First of all, after the last meeting, one thing that was great was Keith called me, just knowing that I was here, and I didn't even say who I was, but he knows me. Anyways, but that was great that I had personal contact was, follow-up was fantastic. One thing I mentioned to Keith that I think would be great is one, on your website, because we talked a little bit about this at that last meeting, about what's your website, what is it good for, and what do you guys plan on doing with it. One thing I was thinking was before your meeting, like when you have your minutes ready, if that's posted on the website, because some of the concern was what if you can't make it scheduled, especially, this is dance week, and so a lot of parents couldn't make it because tonight was picture night. So, that kind of is.
So you can see the agenda.
Yeah, see the agenda, see if you, what's coming up for that meeting, and then after the meeting, when the minutes when she's done with her notes, have been compiled, and if you have answers to questions, maybe within the next week after that meeting, you can print up a report, a follow-up of what happened at the meeting, and post that also as a PDF or some kind of download off of the website, so people that missed the meeting know what they missed, and maybe they can, and then also, you want feedback, you want the generalization, or, you know, from us, and wanna know stuff, people can check that out, and maybe that will spark more thought and more feedback, and you'll get more from the public if they know there's an actual place that they can find out what we talked about.
Well, and I think finding out what we talked about and what we're going to is important. However, and in terms of the agenda ahead of time, it changes. I mean, Ben added things to the agenda this afternoon. We met earlier today and talked about some of the things that we were looking at for tonight, so, you know, it could be.
And the great thing about computers, you can update it.
Or-
It's not like you're mailing that out.
So we've got the option of posting it and saying that it could change.
Right, yeah, and nobody's gonna hold your feet to the fire. No one's gonna say, well, you added something.
Yes, they will.
Well, other than Ken, people will.
And I was to try to look to see if there was an agenda posted, I didn't know, I haven't really used the school board part or whatever. But I do think that if you added like the minutes, you know, within a week or whatever, so that people could see what was, I think that's a great feature just in
And
general.
I've even had a staff person bring that up to me
Yeah.
recently, and I told her, she's kind of behind you, but I told her that was something that we should consider. And I have to tell everybody that we've gone through a lot of growth in this last few months and year, and the standard format for our notes was just the results of our action items and our times for starting and ending. It's been a real, very standard report, and we've shifted now to a system where I take additional notes. And our original intention is to just add board concerns that we have that aren't on our printouts and so forth. So the notes we have right now are not necessarily accurate and complete accounts of what happened at the meeting. Although we could discuss that as a board, and if we think that that's really valuable, I could shift into that direction. So we're kind of evolving this note thing, and I think we're gonna discuss that, and maybe at this point, we could get the agenda on, right, Sue? But the notes thing might take a little while till we kind of figure out exactly how we should present them, for the public.
Sure.
Well,
So
and
be
the other thing
patient, we'll get there.
that I wanted to point out too is thanks to Brad and the paper, we've had a lot more people know what's going on. And believe me, I know about it because everywhere I go in town, somebody will stop me and say, I didn't realize you were the school board president. Things like that.
Can't hide it more.
No, I can't, that's true, no more hiding. But I think that the more people know and the more comfortable they feel coming in and making comments, and I know that's not always been popular in the past, but that's one of the ways that we have evolved as a board, is that we want your input. It's like I said at the last meeting, you're here because you want better things for kids. And that's why we're here too. So whatever we can do together is going to be what's best for all of us.
And why we don't respond just individually is that Sue and I may not agree.
That's why we don't sit
And that's
So I'm just a little uncomfortable with Mr. Hutzman's comment that he wanted a schedule and when iPods. That was all kind of jumbled together. I don't want anyone to make an assumption that, do we have a plan on buying iPods?
iPads.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not iPod.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, but
Okay,
going back
no
to,
music for kids.
going back to what Keith said, the plan would include a rollout with staff first, because you really want your staff, all staff, not just your early adopters, but the folks that are a little more reluctant, to really have that be a valuable tool for them to elevate instruction to a new level. And that takes time, that takes professional development, it takes really immersing yourself in that tool and beginning to integrate it with your overhead projector and finding open source documents that are free, I mean, they don't cost you anything, to then build on your instruction. So that takes more than a weekend, and typically takes 3 to 6 months. So as you work with staff and get staff ready, then the rollout plan and the discussion about what grade levels, is it in the building or is it take home? What do you do if there's no internet? Do you have insurance on them? Do the parents buy insurance? There's about 7 different related discussions that then play out. But no, I think if we were to look at an iPad purchase, it would be staff first, and then the discussion would be board and administration and staff as to where to go from there, so.
And that sounds like a lot, Ben, but I
Yeah.
mean, we want to be fiscally responsible too, and so you want to get technology that's going to be useful to teachers and to kids. And it may seem like you got that delay, but I think a little delay is okay sometimes, right?
Because we're learning from other districts and.
Gary, I just want to put another little spin on that, because I'm all for technology and iPads and all of that, but I also feel very, very accountable that I'm doing the best thing for young kids. And before I would bring iPads into kindergarten, I have to be convinced of how I'm going to use them to teach is more appropriate than a perhaps hands-on method. So it's not just a matter of learning the technology, it is some, at my grade level anyway, some philosophical things about, yes, this is going to be their future, but also what way do they learn best? Yeah, well, but I mean, you know, if I'm doing math, do I want to just do math on an iPad? But don't I want them using manipulatives? Isn't that very important? So for me, I feel very, very accountable to those kids that I'm doing what's best for them and teaching it in that way. So that's not something that in just a very short amount of time that I would, you know, I would want to talk to other teachers. And again, that's just at the kindergarten level, but that's just kind of a little example of why sometimes that can go a little slower when you're really trying to use them in a way that makes sense for kids, not just because they look like the cool thing to do.
So realistically, we're looking at a couple of years. I mean, 3 years ago, there weren't iPads. In 2 years from now, they're not gonna be iPads anymore, they're gonna be something else. So technology changes fast. We, you know, it's one of those things, where if you wait too long to work on something, you're never gonna get there. Or we're gonna be implementing old technology, so. You know, these programs have already been developed for other schools, other districts have this. Can't you just look at another model, similar sized school, and see what we can find that fits this situation? And move ahead at a faster rate?
You can, the one thing you can't skip is the staff professional development. That is critical, and as Carrie said, that's really the nutshell as to how does that instrument augment instruction beyond what it is.
Sure.
And ideally, if you're investing, for us, it would be $12,000 to purchase 24 teachers' iPads, and then you would look at Apple TV for $99 a teacher on top of that to tie into the projectors. Then you'd look at, is there insurance cases? You're up around 700, probably 15,000 would take care of it. It doesn't sound like that much money, but when you're anticipating having to try and make up a deficit of around 200,000, to add 15, it really does get that discussion going. Not that that's not an important discussion to have, and so you make a great point. As soon as you buy a piece of technology and walk out of the door, it's out of date because the next one's already in prototype and beta test, and it's coming. Just like a car, you buy it and you drive it off the lot, and it's now worth less. And so, you know, therein lies the discussion about buy versus lease. Is there a lease return option to roll over to the next generation? So you're right, the models exist. The first step would be to determine, once again with staff readiness assessment, is it the iPad? Is it the Samsung Galaxy Tab? Is it something else? And once you, we could go that way, that'd be a lot cheaper.
They're cheaper.
Yeah, we might have.
There's a laundry set for music there.
Might have everyone wearing bifocals by the time they're 18, but, no, I think those discussions are healthy to have. It's critical to involve the staff to take a look at whatever that instructional platform is, and that's the piece you really can't rush. You can't rush that readiness level and that professional development. Now, the funding or the grant writing or the how are we gonna source that, that product, those are the things you can hopefully move pretty quickly on, because those models do exist, whether it's a lease program or something like that.
Well, so you're not reinventing the wheel. For kindergarten, for example, I'm sure somebody's implemented this somewhere else and can help speed that along. You know, it's not like we have to figure out how to necessarily do math, for example. Somebody's done math on an iPad. We just need to figure out which one's best and fits the teacher. And so there's ways to speed up the process.
My concern though is how are we gonna pay for it?
I just heard him say it cost $15,000. I know 2 students probably go to Ellsworth next year because of it, so $15,000 is now off the table.
Probably
Because
more
if
than
you keep the
two.
students, you have
It's only
$15,000.
it's $15,000 just to implement it for the teachers. That's for the 24 teachers. We're not talking about the students yet.
And we-
That's not the 330 kids.
Right.
What I would do then, I guess, is, it's like Corey said, let's go ask Ellsworth and East Jordan and Elk Rapids and all the other schools that have it. How'd you do it? They did it, like you say, I mean, I'm saying it's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, but eventually you just have to jump up and say, we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it tomorrow morning, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? I think everybody wants to hear
Michelle?
a
I think
very
I'd like
forward-moving plan.
to back up something that Carrie said too. There's also the piece that as a teacher, as an educator, I need to know that that is the best way to get that information to that student and to all of my students. And is that the most appropriate way to do that? And that's one of the pieces of having the teachers look at it and investigate it and learn about it, because that is what you all have entrusted us to do, is to do what's best for those kids and know that that is the best way for those kids to learn. Whether it's counting with bears or cutting up pieces of paper, that they might learn more than they would moving things around on an iPad. Just because it makes headlines doesn't mean it's necessarily the best way.
No, but you will never know.
And I'm not, you just have to, you don't want to jump right in, you need to look at it and make sure it's the best thing.
Well, how do we start that evaluation?
Well, we have to get wireless, right? First.
Yeah.
Isn't that the
Well,
start?
actually, well,
I mean,
that
I'm
could,
all about
no,
that.
actually, the teacher evaluation can start with internet and Google. I mean, you can start your own searching, if teachers can do their own, it's just an initiative to say, okay, teachers, if this is what you wanna do, or if you're, this is where we're headed in the future, and this is what,
And I can tell you those things are happening by teachers on a daily basis as we look at things on our own time and, looking at what is best, what's the best way to teach this.
I've already been in
that happens all
conversation
the
with
time.
teachers in East Jordan who said, I wish we, and I'm not speaking for everybody there, I'm speaking for a couple of teachers I know there who said, we did this too fast. It's a great thing and they liked it, but they jumped in and didn't have enough time to explore what to do. Now, I would do what Corey said, is call up those teachers and say, hey, can I come and observe? And we'll watch how you do this. So I don't think we're opposed to it, but we want to be very smart and very responsible for how we use them.
And
It's
I'll
not the
call the
magic
schools.
bullet.
I know Elk Rapids has it, and Ellsworth, and I'll call and ask them how they funded it.
Well, and one of the things that we've always been proud of in Central Lake is the fact that we are generally research-based on what we do. We don't just do things. We look at the research and see what it says. And I think that's what our teachers are involved in, and our administrators right now is looking into that. And they will get back to us as a board, and we will go from there, so. Lisa?
I don't wanna sound, pissy. But if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. If the way you're doing it now is not working, and it's clearly become an issue over the years, it's not working, you gotta find something else.
And that's exactly, we are looking at that. That's what, 3 or 4 of these answers involved is the way we're looking at things.
I had 4 children graduate at Central Lake. I mean,
Yeah.
I did not notice, I'm gonna call it a decline. I did not notice a decline in education until the last maybe 4 or 5 years. And I don't know when it started, I don't know where it started, I don't know what has caused it, I don't know. But I talked to Ben before, the problem that I have is, it took 10 years to get it to the point that it is now, when we're having to make these huge changes and restructuring and whatever. It's gonna take 4 or 5 years to get it back. My son is in 5th grade, I can't wait 4 or 5 years for him to get the quality of education that I expect him to have. I don't have that kind of time. He's gonna be a junior by the time Central Lake is at the level that I expect him to be educated by. What do I do? Do I move in to a different district who is already at the level that I want? Do I keep him here because I bleed orange and blue and hope for the best? What do? I can't afford to wait 5 years for these changes to bring us back. I can't.
I understand where you're coming from. I really think that you can get the help you need for him here. And we are working as fast as we can, but, you know, like you said, it took 10 years to get here, and overnight is not gonna happen.
I don't expect it to be overnight.
But that
I
is,
don't.
I have to point out that that is one of the things that, I know Connie Kiesel last time talked about how many of you sat in with the interviews for the superintendents. We hired Ben because of the views that he had for the future for Central
Absolutely.
Lake. And he's pushed it, and he's tried it, and he's doing everything he can, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Absolutely, I completely agree, and I don't
But
expect it
if
to
you need
happen
extra
overnight.
help, talk to your teachers, get it, I mean, you know, it's there.
I guess what I would ask is the board try to accelerate any plans that they have and try to make things happen a little bit faster. Sometimes change is hard. People don't like to change, teachers don't like to change, administration doesn't like to change, the board doesn't like to change. We need to speed things up a little bit and kind of look at where we're at.
Corey, I think if you look at where we were,
Maybe.
and then you look at where we are now, in a year and a half, we've accomplished a lot here.
I'm sure.
And, yeah, but, you know, you can only move so quickly. Like you say, change is hard. You gotta have everybody buying in. And so, yeah, it's. but we're
Sometimes you have to
working
drag them kicking
we're
and
working as-
screaming too.
And we're working as hard and fast as we can.
Well, I'm sure you
So,
are, and that might be where you have to hire somebody else, or get some volunteers to come in and help,
Right.
or whatever, but, you know,
Well-
you drag
Well,
people kicking and screaming, because, I mean, there's kids that are losing out on that could benefit from it today, that aren't gonna be around in 4 or 5 years when we get it up to where it needs to be.
You know, it's little things, like Lisa Hoover High last week told me that her class is behind in math, and she's made this comment to me before, and it's not necessarily that she's not doing what she's supposed to be doing, it's that it's taking the kids a little longer than the curriculum says that it should, so they have to spend a little extra time to make sure that the kids know the you know, the process and multiplication tables and whatever else it is that they need to know so that they can build on it. I probably don't know as much as those silly 4th graders do about math anymore. I've probably lost more than they know already, but I am willing to go in and help with the math class. If it helps them, if me helping them 2 or 3 hours a week will bring them up, I'm willing to do that. But I don't have a teaching degree. I don't have a teacher's certificate. I don't have the formal education. I'm willing to do it, and I have the time.
Right, but you would need that specific instruction. I think that we do, I think the things that you guys have suggested about using volunteers in different ways might be an important thing for us to consider and look at here, because we can't put a lot more money into it, so I think the volunteer thing is important.
I've gone in and read with the kids, but I've never, not during like actual instruction stuff. So I don't know, if it's possible, let me know. I'm more than willing to do so. I mean, there's only 4 weeks left of school, but something's better than nothing.
Thank you, Lisa. Yes.
I guess one of the things that scares me though is, and I know you said that if the students are behind or if they're having problems, that they can go in and talk to the teachers. What scares the hell out of me is if my student is getting good grades and staying up, so there's no reason to go talk to the teacher, no reason to go get extra help, but then they take a national standardized test and we find out that they're way behind, that they're not gonna be prepared for college. You know, I was checking our MEP scores and stuff, and, you know, it says we're 6% proficient for science. Oh my God, what are we gonna do? You know, my kids are doing great in school, but all of a sudden I find out compared to the other districts and compared to the rest of the state, we're not doing good. That, you know, if I didn't check those kind of scores and find out that kind of thing, what do I do? I'm not gonna go get more help. You know, how do we get these classes up? That's what scares me, sorry.
Well, one of the things that we talked about that Ben and Shelley have instigated and are really, is the teacher evaluation portion and the curriculum planning that the teachers are doing. The curriculum, you know, looking at the core standards and seeing what we're teaching and what we're not. And those are important things to show that, you know. I mean, yeah, he's doing exactly what I tell him to, or her to, and yet not passing the test. So we're looking at the things that are causing that and hopefully changing them. Shelley, do you have anything to add to that?
Just that we're working on those through the evaluation process and looking at it.
Oh, sorry, one more, that long form that was agreed on, no, is that a validated, accepted form, kind of, that other districts and other, I mean, is this
The
a,
teacher evaluation form?
yeah, is it a standardized form, or is it something we just wrote up one day?
It was in the contract when I came as a teacher, so
Well,
it's
when
been
they-
in there for 13 years at least, so I don't know.
Okay,
It's a standard.
Many
Are
parts
there
of it are similar.
validated?
Yeah, many parts of it, many of the subsets and assessment areas are very similar to the Charlotte data iterations of that evaluation product. I'm not sure of the genesis of this one, I don't know who authored it. I do know that it's in the bargain agreement. When you're implementing, going back to the change discussion, when you're implementing change and you're working with an evaluation process that many people haven't seen, it's a little disconcerting at first. So as you look at a brand new short form drop-in, you know, the unannounced observation, implementing that, and then looking at the long form, which are the scheduled observations, where you say, hey, you know, Mr. So-and-so, I need to come observe you this week, take a day and an hour, tell me the lesson, show me the lesson plan in advance, I'm gonna use the long form, be in there the full hour, I'm gonna tell you, you know, what I like, I'm gonna tell you things I think you gotta work on. Using a tool they're familiar with made a lot of sense, especially since this is the first year everybody in the district's being observed multiple times. So once again, as you look at that change process, here's a brand new instrument that nobody's experienced. And as administrators, Principal Renzi and I have tweaked that document as we've gone through the year, using the standard long form that's in the agreement. Whether or not you might be a veteran teacher, you might not have been observed for 12 years. So on our end, that's a document that's in the agreement. There's no change there. But in reality, there's change there because you haven't used that document. No one's worked with you with that document for quite some time. One thing that all districts are holding back their dollars on, us included, is jumping off and purchasing a high-dollar, iPad-ready, interactive product that you can do the teacher evaluation on, and then when you're done, boom, email the results to the teacher. Those are out there, those are on the market, but if you listen to State Superintendent Flanagan and the work they're doing, the state is working on producing a standardized document. Because one thing that districts have said is we have 560-some districts in the state. Wouldn't it be nice if we had one metric? Why have 567 different evaluation documents? That makes no sense. Let's have a metric, let's have a tool that's vetted, tried and true, that we see some data on, and then we have experts come in and provide training. A teacher wants to make sure that that evaluation is fair and valid, and that if I say you're highly effective, you should be highly effective. If I say you're minimally effective, I should have good reason why I made that indicator. So until that happens, we all are working with the documents we have and going and finding those professional development experiences for administrators to have that training. I've been trained on the Charlotte Danielson model and Marzano's as well. However, each administrator, depending on that tool, is going to implement that differently. So back to that question, how do we make sure that tool's valid? It's coming. Unfortunately, it was supposed to be here this past August, and they're still working on it. So they have made promises that late June, obviously in advance of next school year, the document will be ready for statewide implementation. We'll see.
Now, when you have these new documents and a new evaluation, do you have to wait for the current bargaining agreement to come up and then re-vote it in? Okay, so you can just implement?
Correct.
Okay.
So if there's a statewide document that's available for administration, the only lag time would be making sure the administration was appropriately trained and ready to use that document.
Are they talking about like certification, is that?
You know, I don't know. That may very well be part of it. That may be part of a continuing ed model for a principal to renew a principal certificate or another administrator to do the same. I think making sure you have a certificate that shows you've been through a training model would make sense. That would make everybody feel comfortable about a fair and valid assessment.
I just want to say, because I'm not a big supporter of all the standardized tests, I never have been. And there's a lot of learning in that child, and you as a parent are the only one who can really assess, is that child growing and learning? Is he happy? That's important too. And is he a well-rounded person? But the state can only choose one way to measure if we're successful, and that's on a standardized test. But there's a lot of learning and a lot of care going on in the schools. And it's unfortunate that we only have standardized tests to measure it. But if you walk through and see the teachers working with the kids, it looks good.
And just to add to that, Betsy, it doesn't take away from the fact that we still think the MEP scores are important.
Yes, and I'm glad
It's a big picture.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
we
all
still
about
have
it,
the
but I'm
goal
gonna be
to
on
get
the other
there.
side saying, it's not all about standardized tests.
I understand,
That's why there's a
but
board.
my kid could be in all sports and have a great social life and be really happy, but if you can't figure out what 2 + 2 is, I'm in trouble.
Well,
That's,
yes, but they get there.
I'd like to point out, not to give our Central Lake News a plug, but I did an interview with Mr. Williams back in our March issue about the MEP test. And he really answered a lot of questions in there that you can look at on our webpage, centrallakenews.com, and see that. And I take a look at the last year's results along with this year's results and put them in a table. And what you see are a lot of jumps. It was really mixed. Sometimes it fell quite a bit, other times it jumped tremendously, 20, 30% more effective. In large part, that's due to the class size. If you get a couple kids that fail or succeed with our class size, that's going to make a huge difference in our MEP scores. But he addressed a lot of those concerns in that article. So I just wanted to plug that.
Carrie, and I'm sorry to keep throwing in my little 2 cents back here from the teacher corner, but I can't help it. Ben has used the phrase before that we're building the plane while we're flying it. That is truly the world we live in now in education. The curriculum has changed so many times. I can't tell you how many times that the state of Michigan has changed curriculums. And I'm not using that as an excuse, but just to give you a little glimpse that our materials and resources we have in our classroom don't always match up. For financial reasons, we're not able to keep up with what the curriculum says we could be teaching. We should be teaching. So we are doing, again, kind of hunt and peck for things, do the best thing you can to match up with those standards. But every single time these standards change, we can't afford to buy the materials that match up with it. And we were very, very fortunate this year that we were able to purchase a math series, K5, that matches up exactly with the Common Core standards. So we're very excited because now we have something aligned from grade to grade, which is a huge, huge thing. So we're expecting that we're gonna see some really good things come out of that. But for financial reasons, we have not had up-to-date resources. So that leaves teachers trying to find materials, going without things. And so I applaud your concern, but I would like to suggest that if you really, really care about this, please come in and ask a teacher what you can do to help. Because there's a whole lot of stuff that we don't have, and there's a whole lot of stuff we could ask you to help us find. Again, I'm not using that as an excuse, but I just want to try to explain a little bit that, we're not up to date with what that test is testing in terms of the materials we have to, pull that off.
I want to add to that too. Having taught here for so many years, our teachers put a lot of their money and time and effort into the extra things that the school does not provide. And they often don't get credit for it, and certainly don't get enough credit, but teachers are putting in a lot of extra things that, that are important for our kids. And, you know, if we had some people like Carrie says, come in and say, what can I do? There's a lot of
I think
things.
I visited school last week as teacher appreciation, so I went in every day. And I went
Thank you,
around
Betsy,
and-
by the way. Thank you.
Yes, you guys, I think they need more men, but, but it's not. Just volunteer at lunch. You wanna do something, volunteer at lunch. They're all sitting there, they need mustard. Just tie shoes, the kindergarten. The kid, his shoes are, oh, look at them, and they're not, it's crazy how much, I mean, just time it takes, so it's a big challenge out
Can we
there.
add old business to keep track, I mean, to move forward with this and maybe look into a volunteer network for teacher assistants?
I think that's a good idea.
And just volunteer
We
school
need a
assistants, whether
volunteer
it's
coordinator.
recess, but just a network, for sure.
I just think the people are there. I think that, you
I
know.
think you're the head coordinator, right?
No, I volunteer for too many things. You're already killed me. I'll be a volunteer, but I can't have it.
Thank you.
That's a good idea.
We have one last question before we close this part of,
This part of the meeting?
we're only on number 4. of the meeting. One of the questions that was asked was about the Cleo Purdy Fund money, and when the CL district would benefit from her generosity, which it has done for years, by the way. And is this money for kids? And I'm going to turn this part over to Ben to answer this question, because it certainly has changed in the last few months. Yeah.
You know, this is something that, Jenny, I think you asked a lot of questions.
Yeah, she's
She's coming.
Okay.
Slide back in as we're talking about you, Jenny.
Okay, no, that's okay, I like it.
The generosity of Cleo is probably hard to imagine over the years. I know 10, 12 years ago, she was instrumental in building that wing onto the elementary building for the preschool. 3 classrooms were built. Currently 2 are classrooms, 1 is an office. And in each year after that, she would provide from her personal living expenses money to the district. And so for the last 11 years, she was helping to support that preschool and has done so diligently year after year after year. Unfortunately, she passed away about 5 months ago now, 6 months ago. And so she's not here personally to provide those supports. However, she, as a former educator herself, certified teacher, is a very wise and sage woman, did plan on what to do after her passing. So she had worked for years with the Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation to help provide some supports following her passing for the Central Lake Preschool. And so the good news is, and Jenny, to your question, that money is eventually coming. The reality, though, is that money all goes, every penny, to the Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation. So no money was left specifically to Central Lake Public Schools. However, all of the money left to the foundation is earmarked for the schools through grant requests. So part of my job for the last 4 months has been to work very closely with the fund advisors and fund managers and begin writing those grants. And so the holdup now, or the delay right now, is the fact, it's really twofold. Number one, the estate's not fully settled. And number two, in order to settle it, there's some significant real estate in Santa Barbara that needs to be liquidated. So we're not talking about a dollar amount in a bank account. We're talking about property, apartment buildings, business buildings, office complexes in a city block or 2 out west. So that's going to take some time. I'm not sure how much time. I have asked that question directly of the Grand Traverse Regional Foundation President, Dr. Phil Ellis, and the answer is it could be 6 months, it could be 18 months. It's just a matter of time. But until that is settled, there isn't funds available in the trust to begin accruing interest. So another thing Cleo did very wisely is she set up this trust to run in perpetuity. So the principal is never touched. it's interest only. So disbursements, grant funding requests that I or my successors might write because it's gonna live forever, have to go directly toward her programs that she envisions supporting. And that really starts with preschool. So one of her strong visions, as we can already see and already have benefited from, is that pre-K program. To include birth to 3-year-old programming, which currently we do not have right now in Central Lake Public Schools. But part of her vision was to make sure that 0 to 3 was also a part of the future. So grant requests can go directly targeted at that age group, also at the preschool group. She also provided an avenue for grant requests to go towards K-12 supplemental programming. That can be elective programming, that can be technology, that can be supplemental supports for the district. It can also be staffing, that could include a teacher, could include an aide, could include a clerical position. There are some limitations. It can't be bricks and mortar, so it must be programming aimed directly at students and directly at kids. She also had some vision as to community supports, and so as we look at supporting the whole child, we want to, of course, be able to support the community. And so an interesting thing the board eventually, not yet, will be able to discuss, will be things like if we were to partner with Baker College or NCMC or NMC and provide adult ed classes in our classrooms, which, except for tonight, normally sit empty and aren't used, what sort of programming would the community want? So as I've begun thinking about this, it's not too hard to envision developing a survey to say, if we're looking to meet the needs of adults in the community, would medical terminology classes benefit anyone? What about CPA classes? What about classes towards a real estate license? What about, and so I'm not the community college guy, I'm a school superintendent, but I do know community college people, and I do know staff at Baker and NCMC and NMC and other places as well. So the excitement here really is we're 6 to 12 months out from being on the cusp of some really interesting programming that hopefully we'll be able to implement, starting with that 0 to 3 in that preschool, and then watching that grow and move forward. The process is pretty straightforward. The district writes a grant aiming at a particular program or position or funding stream to implement a 5-year vision of a certain model. The Grand Traverse Foundation has to see, number one, that it's connected to her vision, and number two, they want to make sure it's an efficacious use of her funds. They want to see the data. They want to look at your before and your after. So they want to see whether it's enrollment, whether it's test scores, whether it's poverty rate. They want to look at evidence, and then they want to measure it over time. And they want to make sure, because she stipulated this, that if it's not providing an appropriate bang for the buck, so to speak, that the funding stops and the district's back and reimagining and re-envisioning and writing a different grant request. So once again, going back to how I started, extremely wise and extremely thoughtful in her vision for the future. And so the specifics aren't known by anyone, I don't believe. And so it'll be a long process for district administration and for this board, and boards long after this board, to continue working with the Grand Traverse Foundation leadership and folks that will follow them.
Are we the only school?
She had essentially 3 programs. We are meeting the Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation is the largest benefactor. There is an ESL newcomer English language learners program in Santa Barbara, and there's another related program out in California.
And all the Grand Traverse money is
Right.
all your money.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep. So we are the sole benefactor. We, the district, the students of the district are the sole benefactor of that piece of it.
Amazing.
Yeah, good question.
Yes.
So there's been a lot of controversy over the preschool program itself and having the preschool program not been following her vision. My significant other is her nephew, and our son was in the first year, and we have another son in there now as a 3-year-old. And she was just appalled to find out that we were supposed to get billed. There was never supposed to be a payment factor for anybody, depending, no matter of income or however have you. And right now, the classes were not intended to be split the way they are now. with a public preschool and a Head Start program. They should have all been intermingled the whole time. And we shouldn't be facing the economic, I guess, problems that they're having with Head Start funding cuts. I mean, the Head Start program is already done. They had to
Right.
quit 2 weeks before the other program because of their funding. But the way she had intended, this program would not have been affected by federal or state preschool cuts. And, I mean, she was blowing up my phone when she found out that we were getting billed. I mean, so there's still a lot of controversy over whether what's going on here is truly following what her intention was. I mean, her intention was that her money would pay for all of the staffing for those 3 classrooms. I mean, she envisioned all 3 classrooms running and no child here going without the preschool program. And,
Yep.
you know, it's never been a 3 classroom run program. I mean,
I think everything you're saying, based on, and I've been reading a decade of documents and back and forth letters from her personal fund manager, Gene Snow, everything you're saying sounds accurate. However, the realities of the district having operated that program in the building, there have been over time costs involved, whether it was custodial or consumables or what have you, heat, light, those kind of things weren't part of the model.
It was supposed to have been part of the model, though.
I've heard that.
I mean, the way she spoke to me, I mean, when the whole thing started, my oldest child, who is 12, was a newborn. I mean, that's when the whole thing started, when he was a newborn. And, you know, as it worked out, he was in the first classroom, the first year. I mean, and that is the way, I mean, she envisioned it. And there are other people who could clarify some of her wishes. I mean, specifically Myra. Myra Monroe was the principal then. And, you know, she's not very pleased with some of the way the direction has went with that.
Right. And unfortunately, we as a board can only work with the written documents that she provided, the Grand
Right.
Traverse Foundation, and those differ from what you're just explaining. And so a bit of the thrust and the vision doesn't match what you just said. And that's a story I've heard from Nancy Sauls and from others.
Right.
And so the unfortunate reality is we do have 2 programs. We have a preschool program that's still running, and we have a Head Start program that closed May 10th.
Right.
Their model is aiming at an 8 to 12 program for next year. We as a board have already had a discussion that we frankly don't like that, and we want to prop it up to make sure it runs 8 to 3. That's an added cost for us to provide funding to run it from 12 to 3, because the NMCAA, the parent.
Right, I understand that, but I'm still finding the disconnect between, you know,
I think
her funds should kick in to pay whatever NMCAA is not paying their teachers, so that it can continue to be a full day program. That means so that they wouldn't have had to stop school 2 weeks early.
And unfortunately, her funds are not there because they're in limbo. And I think that's
The interest still should have been working. The interest on what she had already donated still should have been working now.
She didn't donate it until her passing. And that's the version I'm getting from the Grand Traverse Foundation. So that's the process that is unfolding as the estate is settled, at least according to the written documentation they've shared. So,
But we are looking into it, and it's something that's.
believe me,
that is-
it's
Yeah,
been a large part of the last 4 months of my
Yeah, I know, Tim said several conversations with you.
I think that the short-term frustration is the reality we're sitting with. The long-term, it looks like that program will be well supported and running as she originally envisioned. So,
I mean, I just don't know how it got from 8 years ago to now.
We're looking into it.
And, I mean, she was appalled because, you know, there's only so many family members with young kids. And so it had been several years since one of the family members had been in the preschool program until my youngest son started. And, you know, she was not happy. And she was talking about cutting all of her funds at that point because she was not happy with the way it was going. I mean, she was calling my house 3-4 times a week
I totally understand, because, you know, I've been familiar with this whole program from the very beginning. And I was in the thought that it's as you described it. That it was
Right.
for every child in Central Lake, and
Right.
it shouldn't have cost anything for anybody. And the very first I found out about it was when Tim told me that he was going to
Yeah, he's been
be
heavy.
charged. Yeah,
He's been,
yeah, so. But we are continuing to look into it, so thank you for bringing that up. Well, in closing, this was a rather lengthy question and answering session, and I'm sure that it won't take that long normally once we get into the rhythm of it. And I think this is going to be a good addition to our formal agenda. And the next part that we're going to get into is, and I hope it won't be as long, guest and public comment. Is there anything anybody would like to add?
Thank you.
Thank you to Sue, who's an awesome president, and encourages us to have our opinions and is not threatened by having different opinions, so good job, Sue.
And Betsy and I, although we differ frequently, never put it on a personal level, so it's always worked out good.
I have one, and I'll make it really, really quick.
All right.
First, thank you, and secondly, I really have no personal involvement in the schools. I don't know if you realize that. It's not because I have kids here, or grandkids, or nieces, or nephews. The first time I've been in the school, and longer than I want to admit, was to see Ben in his office a while back. But anyway, so what I hear is from the public. So I think maybe even as a community and as a board and everything else, you talk about how well the school's improved in the last year and a half. Maybe that's not getting out there. Maybe there's a bad perception in the public because people are here because they've heard bad. They're not here to say, thank you, you guys did a great job running again next year. You know, so maybe you need to get that word out there more of the positives, the good things we're doing. We hear the good things that come from other communities, and honestly, when I open the paper, I see good things from other schools. And I just don't think Central Lake's doing maybe all we can to put out the positives from our school system so people see it in a different light. Because it's sad when our community looks on our school system without a lot of pride. And somehow that pride has to
Well, we did
come
have a lot of
up.
pride. We had a very nice prom. Kids all behaved.
And that has to get,
We
you know,
need to
we
make-
have
we
to
need
get
to
it out
make
there
sure
to
those-
the public.
I went to the art room. They're
Yep.
painting garbage cans in the art room. Mrs. McDowell was doing that.
Yeah, we're gonna put it all around town and show everybody. But those things we gotta get out in the
So,
media more
yeah.
and talk about it
No.
more and
And
more
that's
of a
one of the
positive
reasons that I
spin.
was so glad Michelle was here tonight to share some of those things with you, and that Deb McDowell was here tonight to share. And you know what, if people came to more board meetings, we have that proportion. Every month, we have something we're proud of, that some teachers or staff or sports people or students are coming in to share with us. And I was gonna thank the paper because,
Well, I mentioned to Tracy, but she's not here tonight, and I said, look, we've got a page, we'll put in the all school board stuff, all for you guys every month, we can get it on the website immediately. She was gonna bring it before you to, chat, but since she's not here.
well, and I
there it is.
appreciate that you're writing editorials and you're covering the meetings, and I think the more things we get out, and the more people who visit our school and see the things, like Betsy said last week, she was here every day and walked into those classrooms and saw amazing things going on.
The kids are
Yeah.
cute and teachers are smiling.
And we can't forget the teachers that are dealing with these cuts and trying to do their best and hold their standards for what they believe in and why they even got into this profession. You know, it affects the teachers as well.
And I think the board's to be commended for joining me in that mantra. I know when I got here, I talked about, after meeting with every teacher and looking at programs, we're small enough, we can't cut staff. When you look around at districts that are facing similar deficits or greater ones, and they're hemorrhaging staff. We posted two jobs, full-time positions. Folks who are applying were from neighboring districts who'd been laid off. The pink slips have already gone out up the road and further up the road, and that's really unfortunate. I applaud the board for taking the stance that we value the employees we have. We want to make sure we work with each and every employee to make sure they're here next year, as we did last year, and avoid cuts if at all possible, especially cuts that begin to hit that curriculum programming in the classroom, because that hits students. And those are the harsh realities of where cuts usually hit. So I think the board's to be commended for doing their level best at being fair to the dollar.
Thank you. To move on to, we have a motion to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting of April 15th and the special board meeting on April 22nd.
Motion.
I'll second.
So we're officially done with public comment.
Yes. Well, until we get to the end of the meeting. We haven't toward the end that you.
I think we did it.
I've
got to leave at 10
So,
Chantel's almost
it has been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes.
Second is from.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion is carried. We have no committee reports. And that's another thing that we're considering is doing our committees differently. Melanie and I went to an MASB, a Michigan School Board's meeting, and they suggested in small school districts, rather than having 5 or 6 committees and everybody's on a couple of them, they have what they call the COW. I know some of you appreciate that more than others, but it's the committee of the whole. And it will be a posted committee meeting, and it will consider all things, the financial and the budget and the building and grounds, and anything that comes up like that will be considered at that meeting. It will not be a meeting where decisions are made. There won't be action items. It will just be an informational type meeting. So committee of the whole, watch out for the cow.
We're not there yet.
No, but it's one that we're discussing, just because it's more, none of us want to have 6 meetings a month. And
And we love meetings.
we do love meetings. You've had a chance to review the expenditure log and look at the bills for April. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, I will,
I'll make a motion to approve.
thank you. That's what I was looking for. Melanie supported. If there's no more discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion is carried. And we are going to go on to the action items. Notice how much faster this is moving along now. Our first action item is to consider a motion to approve the recommendation to hire Ms. Sarah Finney for the position of full-time band director music teacher. And that will be a K-12 position.
Motion.
Keith and Betsy.
Can we have a discussion on that? Now, who was there at the interview?
Sarah, Shelley, and
The 3 of us there.
Sarah Thayer.
Right.
oh, yes,
Well, I mean Sarah Finney.
right.
Right.
And because we're increasing this music band from part-time to a full-time position, it will allow us to return to music classes for the elementary. And revive the Christmas program. That's 2 of the goals that we have.
And Beth, you had a question?
I just wondered how many applicants did you
We had
guys?
9 applicants. We narrowed that pool down to 4 for interviews. 1 withdrew before the interview started. We interviewed 3 and really had 3 strong candidates, really strong candidates. And we were very fortunate to, I believe, we were fielding applications from Colorado. Music jobs that are full-time in K-12 districts are rare. And so we put the word out, MASB, or MASBO, the band website, put it on our website. We got the word out, and it was nice to see that level of interest from educators who had experience working with elementary music programming and music appreciation and early instrumentation all the way up through, the marching bands, the full high school ensemble. So really neat.
Now with Sarah as technically Ellsworth's employee, is there any sort of contract there that we have to compensate Ellsworth for her position since she was just a contractor?
No. That's a good question. Last year and for many years, I believe 7 or 8 years, We have had a shared agreement with Ellsworth where the individual was employed by Ellsworth Public Schools, and Central Lake split the cost basically. So we got half the day of instruction, Ellsworth got half the day of instruction. Really one thing that led to this, Ellsworth, with a new superintendent coming on, wanted to rebuild and change their schedule. So they're reimagining the way they run their school day as we speak. One piece of that was to move their morning band classes to the afternoon. That's when we have our band classes. So clearly that was going to create a conflict. Had we done that, had we agreed to flip ours to the morning, we would have had to have also moved building trades to the morning, our health careers classes to the morning. All of our electives would have had to have flipped to the morning. And that was going to create some significant issues for some of our dual enrollment and shared agreements. So we severed ties, and
She's free and clear.
She's free and clear. So.
Okay, are there any more comments or questions? But we already did that. All right, all those in favor of Sarah Finney being our next full-time band director, music teacher?
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion is carried. The next thing on our action items is to consider the motion to approve Superintendent Williams' annual evaluation rating of effective as per a review of his progress toward the goals established by the Board of Education. And I have several pages that talk towards his goals. However, being that we've already spent so long on this meeting, just to briefly review some of the things that we looked at with Mr. Washburn, who was here before last week, and Mr. Williams. We looked at the goals for the current school year, and there were three main areas that we were working on with him. We were looking at student achievement, we were looking at leadership, and we looked at management. And we had some specific areas for growth in each one of those. And overall, the board assigned a rating of effective to Superintendent Williams. And now we need to formally consider that motion and approve his evaluation rating.
So I had a quick question. Mike Washburn did say that he was going to send the evaluation document around for us to look at, and I did not see that. And is that going to get?
I saw his preliminary document, but I did not see a final copy.
You guys saw, I didn't see the preliminary. I think in the past, we've all seen a copy of the
Oh, I
preliminary.
may have seen it.
Has anybody?
He did send an preliminary
was
copy,
too.
and he asked if we had any questions or comments to send them to him.
Was it a while ago, or?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
might have-
It was
been a
the
while.
first time we met.
Okay, so I was probably the one
Okay.
when that went around.
So anyway, Mr. Williams met the majority expectations in all goal areas. Many of his achievements were exemplary, but some required growth, and we were looking at those things. And he has what we consider a strong work ethic and certainly a dedication to Central Lake schools. And we look forward to working with him in the future to strive for even greater accomplishments. So, I would consider a motion to approve his evaluation rating as effective as per review of his progress towards the goals established by this board.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Keith. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Thank you, motion has passed. Only 6 more pages. The next action item is to consider a motion affirming the Shar-M ISD budget for the 13-14 school year. This is required by law, and subject to a misdemeanor violation if the local board of education the local board of education is required to pass this motion affirming the ISD budget, and it has to be done during the month of May. If the board should decline to affirm the ISD budget, they are required by law to return their suggestions to the ISD for consideration at the ISD budget hearing. And that is where the budget will ultimately be approved. We do not make changes to this budget. It's really an assumption of the proposed budget for the general fund education that Sharon gets. It's a flat state aid funding. And is anybody interested in having me read all the things that money goes to? Because there are general fund programs, there are about 15 of them.
Sue, I think it'd be important to highlight 21st century programs. I know those programs with federal dollars being cut to sequester, those programs are beginning to fall by the wayside. I know grant proposals have been put out. Many districts are finding out they haven't been funded. The SHRM has been very gracious about providing money to local districts to help prop up and support 21st century programs. AmeriCorps workers, we have AmeriCorps worker this year, we will again next year.
The Great Start programs.
Great Start, so, they've been a good partner ISD. I've worked with other ISDs, and I tell you, SHRM is near the top as far as the amount of money that they push back through the local district. They really do a nice job.
Well, and another thing that they do here in Central Lake is the general fund services. They give us, they provide business services for us and literacy services, and they do a lot of professional development and training. It's done through SHRM and paid for us by law. So, is there any more discussion? Or any discussion about this? Then I will consider a motion to affirm the SHRM ISD budget for the 13-14 school year. Support. Mel and Sarah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion is passed. The next one, consider a motion to set the date for a public hearing regarding the 2012-2013 school year budget. And that will be set for Thursday, June 27th at 6 p.m. and designate 6:30 p.m. that same evening for the board to adopt the final budget for the school year. Motion? Support? Okay.
Not a mountain, can't hear you.
Losing her voice.
We've had a lot of that tonight.
Yeah. Okay, so it's been motioned and supported to set the date for June 27th. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion is carried. Okay, the last thing we have as an action item is the ISD-wide calendar for the 13-14 school year.
And this is actually based on their template. What promotion approved would be the specific Central Lake calendar. Michelle Perkins and the EA Executive Committee and I met last week, was it, I believe? And we finalized the calendar. In order to do so, we have to keep in mind the new state law, which is in effect this year, of a minimum of 170 student days. And again, the minimum of 1,098 student contact hours. So, we've seen with some interesting weather this year, we had to make some adjustments, so that's why the year has grown by 3 days. We're now into June, getting out that midweek and first week of June. This calendar meets the standard. The total instructional hours would be 1,104, so it's above the threshold. And we are at the 170 student days. So the first day would be September 4th. The day after that, Labor Day, is typically a teacher work day, and we maintain that pattern. And the last day next year, assuming a mild winter, would be June 3rd.
Where do you guys make this the personal Central Lake calendar? I mean, what's different from the regular ISD?
Well, the ISD calendar has none of this scripting on it. It comes as a basic template, and because the ISD
It has
member,
the, it has our, I know ISD determines the vacations, all right?
it has a standard, that winter break and the spring break already in there. And then it has a standard fall professional development day, which is an ISD-wide day where all 11 member districts are out of school. They also have a spring one, which is optional, so we can either be in school or out of school. And so the things that we've done in talking with the teachers and looking at professional development needs are taking a look at some things like a half-day release on a Friday, so that students would be here during the day but then leave around 11:30, and the staff would remain to work with professional development opportunities. So we've built that into the next calendar. We've also built in that May transitions day where the staff works to discuss with the next teacher in the next grade level, each and every student that is promoted up. We have the end of the semester in there. We have the release days for parent conferences in there. So what they give us is that template that's completely blank, and then we discuss and build the district-specific calendar.
Do you have as many professional development days as we had this year, or more or less?
The hours are actually 3 hours or less, but we have more days because we're exploring a half-day release model. I think as you look at kind of the 2 days full release of professional development at the front end of the year, while that looks like a lot of time, it begins to wane as the year goes on. So what we wanted to do was look at a half-day release every 3 to 4 weeks in the fall semester to begin to get some contact time in a smaller chunk, more manageable chunk, that would allow teachers to start with an initiative and then revisit it with their peers again a few weeks later. So I think it's a model that hopefully will be very, very productive for everyone.
Are we going to school on November 15th?
I was just gonna say that.
I always roll the dice
It's
up.
on a Friday.
Is that gonna be a day off?
It's Friday, that usually indicates a big,
Important things, you know?
a big no-show, absences.
Well, this is a couple years back, we were that close to not counting the day.
I know.
So
And then the
I'm glad you
following
brought
year,
that up.
because we came close, the following year, we took it off, even though it was like a Tuesday, which
Right.
I can see Friday is gonna be a tough one.
We go back and forth on that. I think as you look back at history, like you said, some days it's out, or some years it's out, some years it's a day of school, and then there's students who are not there.
Well, it is a Friday this year.
It's Friday, so that's a pretty good indicator that it will be taken off.
Even probably people who don't know.
Remember, Sue, we won't make the numbers.
Why go?
Just call your kids home, I don't care if they're sick.
If it's on a Friday or a Monday.
Michelle, I don't remember if we brought that discussion up in our meeting last week. I know we did, I can't remember what it felt like.
I only know because I didn't like
It was
it
Wednesday.
off on like a Tuesday or Wednesday. It
Yeah.
made no
The
sense.
week panic.
I remember
And we
being
did it
floored
because we
when
were
moved
being
up here from
conservative.
downstate, then we got the first day of hunting season. That was like, oh.
Majority
Well, so should we
Well,
approve the
What
calendar,
you
or
have
should we take a
before you
look
is
at
this
it?
calendar as it sits now. So it's yours to approve. And if you approve it, then that's the calendar.
We're just approving the ISD.
No, you're just approving the ISD.
Right, not the
No.
CLPS.
Michelle?
Go ahead.
If the teachers approve
Yes,
as well.
that's the other half.
Sorry.
So we approve, and then the teachers have to vote on, and you have a meeting Wednesday for that purpose. If the board does not motion and vote this through, and the teachers do, then we're back to the drawing table as far as, okay, what calendar, or what version are we then gonna look at for the next school year? So right now, we have before you this draft, which is a draft until it's approved by both sides, but it's one that both groups did put together, put it that way.
If we, say, I think like the 15th of November, say we leave it like that and not enough kids show up, is it treated like a snow day?
You would not be able to count the day if you don't have your 75% in attendance and membership, and it would, I believe, be added on the end of the year, because it would not be.
And we've already
due to weather.
invested in buses and everything else.
What do you believe your teacher's take would be?
Not many of us,
15,000?
but
Do you have Gary, do you have, what's that?
Harry, is that part of your professional development?
No, I typically go a day off for shopping, I might go for, but.
Well, for school supplies, here, one of the things that we always looked at in the elementary school was the fact that you're putting 100 kids in potentially in the woods who might not otherwise be. You know, I mean, you have little kids running around. He's looking at me like. But seriously, that's the way we used to look at it in the elementary, is that for safety reasons, they kept the kids in school.
You need better parents then.
A school's job.
Man.
I agree. Well, if we don't make the grade, we just add the day on at the end of the
Last
year.
time it was about 77% membership, does that sound right, when we came close? Was that about 5-6 years ago?
Well, I know it wasn't that long, and it was a middle of the week one, I think.
There was a flu that was bad
Oh.
at that time too. It had sensitive.
Yeah, that year was a bad year.
No. So do we want to take potluck and just hope that we have enough, and if we don't, we don't? Or should we just give everybody the day off? And
I think they all like
Maybe the teachers will have to say.
In the last,
It was just 2 years ago we started it.
Don't know that we do, it just felt that way on the calendar. We both ultimately have to approve it though.
it was the flu.
That's why you started.
Sure.
We hadn't done it in years.
The one.
So let's table
Let
this
it die, and go back up.
There was a flu.
Is there a motion on it?
Same year, one
No, there isn't.
It wasn't just hunting.
Yeah, why don't we just table it until next
We didn't
month?
almost make the numbers one year, so when we
Make
found
sure
it,
that's
they
the
said we
original.
didn't almost make it, so we better take it off. And
But it
that's
was
what,
the flu.
I don't have a gavel,
they
sorry.
didn't tell us. They told us it was something.
Betsy, you're only allowed 3 minutes.
Okay,
I'm for doing if it,
That's it, we're tabling it until next month. Yeah, we'll let the teachers talk about it and see what they want to do.
I think that really makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, they'll know.
That gives Michelle and I time to talk
Yeah.
before Wednesday, and we can make sure that we address the concerns, and take a look at it.
All right, good, so we're tabling that. And our next thing is the superintendent's report.
3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Three?
Let's
go. Starting out in curriculum instructional administrative updates, we're in the process of working with teachers to talk about the cost-neutral recess model. We already talked about that. Prom was a huge success. Rainy weather clears, allowed for great picks. Also, as in years past, I'm working with the Friends of the Library, the Central Lake District Library, to help us provide some funding to help defray the cost of the Accelerated Reader Program. They've been very generous in the past and have always given some money towards our costs. Our costs are around $2,267 to provide Accelerated Reader for our students, and they have been a great help in the past. I'll be working with Rebecca again to help get that support.
They also have done in the past the readers, the weekly readers,
Elastics.
and
Yeah.
elastics and things
Right.
like that,
Yep.
which has been a good program. I mean, one of the things that kids go home and talk to their parents about are the things they see in that newspaper.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Operational village, I've talked about already. NLEA luncheon. Last week, I had the privilege of taking our top 3 students in the senior class, Carrick, Kyle, and Eliza, to lunch with the Northern Lakes Economic Alliance. We actually were greatly honored because we ate with Ken Creasy.
Well, I felt the other way around.
And Ken was there, I think Joe was there, Sam was there, Scott Barrett was there. It's a neat program. What it does, it puts over 600 business owners, members of local chambers of commerce, local officials, including elected officials, senators, members of the House, representatives, all in one room, and students have an opportunity to network and get to meet business owners and movers and shakers in the community. It was really cool. Last year, we did the same thing. And so it's a neat program put on by the NLEA, whose home office is in Moines City. I happened to drive by it the other day. CTE banquet, also last week. If you haven't noticed, this is banquet and celebration time of year, which is a great time of year. Honored to attend the Career Tech Ed banquet, where students, Central Lake students from all 4 Career Tech Ed programs were recognized for their hard work and success excelling in their individual classes. This banquet was at the Boyd Mountain Resort. Finance personnel updates. Talked about the BAM position already. The guidance position hopefully we'll have before the board at the next meeting as we finalize that hire. Bus purchase motion delayed. We've had this discussion again as we're working with NMCAA and Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation to ascertain our costs for supporting or taking over the Head Start program. We are going to eventually, hopefully in the next meeting, have a formal motion on the board agenda to lease a bus, not purchase. I would rather allocate the funds in a lease, which allows us to bite that $75,000 price tag off over time, freeing up funds if we can to provide key supports for the preschool Head Start program in the fall. Talking about capital projects accounts, I think, Sarah, this was a question you had asked. Baird, Cotter, and Bishop, our auditor, did confirm the funds that are allocated currently in our 3 project accounts are mobile, although they're considered committed funds. They're mobile. They are available for other uses, so even though we have technology, we have transportation, we have our facilities fund, monies from each of those 3 funds can be moved to the general fund with a formal board action. So while they're mobile, they are,
What are the
up
3
for
funds
discussion.
again?
The technology, the transportation, and then the campus facilities fund. So and we do have money in each of those funds. The genesis of those funds, it appears about 12 and 11 and 10 years ago, when the district was rife with more money. They moved $1.2 million at that time into, spread across those 3 funds to begin to provide some long-term supports for example, transportation or technology and those kinds of things. Those numbers have dwindled dramatically over the last 12 or 11 years as the district has had to work with those funds to provide supports in those categories.
Betsy, Ben, do we either have to buy a bus or lease one this year? Are you telling us that?
As I've mentioned last time, we would be stretching it. I don't know if you saw what happened up the road in Indian River at the start of the year when a bus wheel and axle fell completely off. We have buses that have all passed DOT inspection. We do have a bus that, as the Northern Michigan salt takes its effect on those frame rails, it's getting a little spotty. It may pass inspection again. I'm inclined to err on the side of safety. I would rather lease a new bus if it in any way is suspect as being firmly mounted on its frame. I wouldn't want to take that chance. So I think that's $12,000 worth.
Of course, an inspection is a kind of a confirmation that it is ready to go.
But if you trust Larry Essenberg, who's been doing this a long time, when he starts backpedaling saying, I'm not really interested in putting on the road, I trust him. So, I think that's really where we are. I know it was our time last year to do it. We put it off last year. And so we could put it off again. I think you're beginning to gamble with safety, and I don't want to do that.
Ben?
Yes.
Bounce back between finance and curriculum. Once we have a better understanding of the cost it's going to take us to prop up Head Start, are we going to be able to reassess that? We had talked about this, the art and reinvesting some of the art.
Yes.
Are we going to be able to go back to that? Because I know we really kind of tabled that until we could find out if we would still have the funds to move forward with that because of the Head Start program. Is that something we're going to be able to assess within the next couple of months?
I'll qualify my answer, and I'll say a qualified yes, depending on the funding request being formally approved or denied. I've already submitted one to the Regional Foundation for next year. If that grant request is approved in whole, then we will know for sure the funds that we're getting, and then we will be able to look at the remaining funds across our budget spectrum to make those decisions.
And the time frame on that?
We've got to approve the budget by the end of June. If they don't get us confirmation one way or the other, then we can't count on any of those funds being available to us. So that will affect our discussion, and that's one reason Principal Dorenzi has multiple schedules on the table.
Right. Thank you.
No, that's a good question. Technology updates, we're working with Charlotte ISD, I touched on this earlier, to allow us to make a prudent decision about tech support services for the next school year. Bob Alger has confirmed he'll have this information to me hopefully by the end of this week, so shortly thereafter we'll be able to make some good assessments about posting that position or part contracting out or entirely contracting out. We'll see. Buildings and grounds updates, here's a nice bit of good news. The board had approved us working with funds, the sinking fund, to build a 12 by 20 structure because we are overflowing our back hallway with athletic equipment. We don't have a place to store the equipment, and with the stage and the podium and some other things in that back hallway, the fire marshal is obviously insistent that be a clear and free access out of the building. The good news is the building trades class just built a 10 by 12 storage building instead of the 12 by 20. So we have that one up and running and ready to be filled. The reason they did that rather than build a 12 by 20 is the 12 by 20 structure as approved would hit the threshold for which you need to go through the state commercial building site improvement process. And that requires it to sit on a permanent foundation, which we did not want. So that would have delayed the project, cost more money. So what we've done instead is we have the 10 by 12, which is portable, requires no permits, and is there right now. And so then the second piece of that would be if it's full, you build the second one. So
I understand the timing of this, it didn't work for that, but I think it would be nice if our kids to go through some kind of plan review type scenario and to go through inspections and to deal with the building code and so forth, because I don't believe our kids have done this in quite some time.
Right.
And to expose them to that, if this is the career path they're gonna choose, they better get on board with, plan reviews and inspections and so forth. So in the future, it'd be nice to see them kind of go through that
I agree.
process.
That's a very good point. Now with the Mother's Day snow having cleared, field maintenance and lawn care is in full swing. Gary and Vern have been very busy. Gary is returning to full duty after an absence, and Vern has really been working hard. Another update that I just watched take place today is the trench out back by the hoop house has been completed. The water line is in, the frost-free spigot is in, dirt is backfilled, there is some grass. It was hand dug and it was dug with a backhoe very, very carefully. They avoided all the misdig things that were marked, and they hit 7 others that weren't marked, but they didn't cut any of them. They were very careful. Evidently, when you work with fiber optic, they'll just tell you cut it and we'll come repair it. They don't come mark it. Well, when you cut it and they come repair it, there's a hefty price tag. So I understand how they operate, I just don't like it. So hats off to D&M and Buffman's for being very, very diligent, working with Vern and being very cautious. Took a little longer, but the project is done with no damage to anything. Unless no one's internet works tomorrow, then we'll see. But no, it was working earlier, so I think we're okay. Campus beautification for graduations this Friday, May 17th. Lisa Hooker Hyde, as she did last year, is going to be an integral part of this. She's going to work with staff and others in the community. If you have gloves, strong arms, and back, and or rakes, shovels, and pruners, she could probably use your help. I know, Greg, you helped tremendously last year, as did many teachers. And families of teachers even. Lisa will provide the trailer and the mulch, and we will take care of campus beautification. And I got to watch last year firsthand Greg prune a cherry tree. It was exciting. Something he does.
It's a lifelong skill.
Something he does in his sleep. And I'd never seen it done, so that was cool. That was neat. And that's it. That's the update.
Well, thank you. And I also want to remind you, Friday, May 17th, February, right? That's because it was so cold. May 17th is the rehearsal for the dance recital, and then the dance recital will be Saturday and Sunday. And you will get to hear me speak again.
Are you going to be able to speak? I'm sure.
I don't know, it's good.
A little backup?
But, moving on, closing guest and public comment. Yes.
I just wanted to share, just in addition to Friends of the Library and how generous they have been. I've been working on a project for the past 2.5 months now, I think it is. and I have reached my goal. I told them I'd like to see 200 books, and I've reached that today. And I'm only a little over halfway through the cottage of looking through the books for getting accelerated reader books into our school system. So if you go to the little cottage and the people working there are all volunteers, you tell them thank you. They have donated over 200 books to this school.
Are they used books that come in and?
All the books that they get are donated by this community, and then they sell those books and they update our programs.
Oh.
They donate money here, they donate money there, they help the public library. Just a phenomenal group of community members, and most of them are all retired elderly people. And it gives them something to do.
Bunch of grandmas.
It was the elderly part that got her.
I also would like to put in, they are open from 1 to 4 every day but Sunday, and there is just a
1 to
really-
4, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right now yet. They haven't expended their hours yet tonight.
But they will very
They
soon.
will soon here. But please support them and please thank them. It's neat. It's giving Jan and I more work. And I'd like to also thank also getting our library system updated. It is wonderful. I think it's been 12 or 13 years since it's been updated. And the new Follett system, we're still learning the ins and outs, but it's very nice.
And if you haven't already, check the district website. It's under the resources tab. We have from home, you can go on and look and see what books are in the library. The system is not fully loaded yet, but I know you've been working diligently, and Cal's done a nice job of getting that squared away. So great partnership. Thank you.
And the little cottage bookstore has a lot of nonfiction and gardening books and
Sarah, on
travel.
old business, could you put down plan for Hoop House, just to remind us? I'd like to visit that, but I'm not up right now.
Betsy, kindergarten's planting the hoop house on.
What is the plan for the Hoop House?
Oh, I'm not involved anymore.
Can
Betsy.
we put it on the agenda?
Old business.
Gary,
For old business next month.
Betsy, if you want to come and visit kindergarten again, we're planting some things in the hoop house on next week on the 21st in the morning. And I just want, speaking of that, I just want to say thank you again to board members that were in our building last week, and also to Melanie, who came to our staff meeting last week. We don't get a lot of extra people that want to hang out with us.
It was very interesting to me.
Well, thanks. It meant a lot to the staff, so thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see them right here. And hopefully they won't be this long ever again. I will,
Second Monday.
I will, yeah, second Monday every month. It's the
And
same
thanks to the
time.
village for switching days.
We thought you could have somebody to report. No, you're welcome. More than happy to.
No, I entertain a motion to adjourn at 9:30.
Motion.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, the same? All right.